in the Committee of the Whole open session?
No.
Michael.
Is there anybody here for public comment for Committee of the Whole?
I think so.
If there's anybody here for public comment for the Committee of the Whole, raise your hand.
Anybody here to speak?
Anybody here to speak?
I'd like to say something.
Okay. All right.
They're not invited.
SEC. Priscilla.
Strategic Education Committee, to begin with, we're going to have principal presentations. And can I ask the board to hold your questions until the end of each section?
But what if we can't wait that long?
Write them down and ask at the end, please.
Just kick that out your way.
No problem.
Oh,
And I'm going to ask Jessica if she'll get the slide deck up. I'll pass these out and get the slide deck because we have a couple of introductory.
Okay. I want you to not be in the night thinking I still got it. No, that's not the right one. I was just not being thinking I got it.
Mr. Miller, this is to write your question on.
That's what we do with
Anybody else
at teacher. And you pass the question.
Priscilla, can you write my question down for me?
No, I cannot.
But you're a teacher.
Okay.
But I'm not a survey.
Expert.
I am not a survey.
We all are.
You ladies come to the table. Y'all come on up.
Public service.
I'm going to ask the schools to come on board, both the elementary, middle, and high. We're going to go 15.
And somebody can sit right here too. Got one more seat right here.
Michelle, Michelle English Watson and I'll get us started.
But you pull over to here to the table. Pull up to the table also.
Okay, go ahead, Cindy.
Okay, so just as a backdrop of our conversation with the school leaders, and we have teacher leaders that came along with the principals. We did lose one who had to go pick up a child from child care, but
We're sorry.
we understand. So here's what we're going to do this afternoon. We're going to talk about the Plan, Do, Study Act reports that you all requested. And these PDSA plans will build the foundation for continuous improvement next fall. So you're going to hear from our very first 3 volunteers who have some good information to share. We're going to provide an overview of winter map data. We see some bright spots in those data. So we're excited about that. We're going to talk to you not only about the data, but next steps. What are we doing about it? And then we're going to review multi-tiered systems of support, that's support for all students. Specifically, we want to talk about Pbis, social and emotional curriculum pilot in our 4K program, and the Department of Alternative Programs, the supports they provide. And then we're going to be talking about literacy. The last 2 months we've referenced Lexile levels. We've talked about our data in regards to Lexile. And now we want to talk to you about some digital content that we're using to really impact student learning and accelerate learning. And you're going to get to hear from 3 teachers, 2 from Simmons Pinckney and 1 teacher from Wando High School. And then finally, we have some routine state textbook adoptions. To frame this conversation, you saw this visual from John Hattie last month, and we talked about collective teacher efficacy and the impact that it has, and that's when all of your teachers in the building can work collaboratively around students and provide the supports. And we also talked about classroom and behavioral and that effect size. And out of John Hattie's very first pass at the research, he did a meta-analysis over the data, looking at what really works and what impacts student learning. And what he found is that good climates, strong climates, an environment that supports learning has a very high effect size. So we're going to talk about those 2 things because those things go hand in hand, the academics and that overall school environment. You've seen this slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it really does frame everything we're doing inside learning services and in our schools. And really what it stands for is response to intervention for all students, really thinking about a core, a good solid grade level core, and then what do you do for students that are working above grade level, and then what do you do for students who are working below grade level. And you're going to hear from the Simmons Pinckney teachers and the Wando teacher about those specific strategies that they're using with Achieve 3000 to do just that. How do they differentiate? We also want to think about that notion of differentiation and how do we know when we differentiate. And I will say, no matter where I've worked, this is my 3rd school district, almost always folks will say to me, my job is to teach grade level standards. I'm a 5th grade reading teacher. I'm a 4th grade math teacher. I'm a English Language Arts middle school teacher for 8th grade. But it's real important that you don't just deliver standards. It's real important to look at where your students are and think about how you fill in gaps, if they've got gaps in their achievement levels, and how you enrich and accelerate if they're working above level. So you're going to hear us talking about that a lot in the next few months. Sharon.
Okay. So I know you've seen our gears, our leverage gears. We consider these high leverage gears. As each principal present their information as it relates to their school's programs, processes, and achievement data, you will hear evidence of implementation of our focus strategies. This is our track. This keeps us, this is a track as to where we're going with our strategies, and we want to stay focused on this. So you'll see this over and over again as we review it over and over again. Okay? And
we have Ms. Malone up, and if you'd introduce anyone that's with you and tell a little bit about your school.
Okay. My name is Janice Malone, principal at Dunston, 11-year principal at Dunston Elementary, a former National Distinguished Title I school and former reward school for student progress. We serve approximately 385 students, pre-K through 3rd grade, 64% African American, 27% Hispanic, 7% Caucasian, and 2% other, with a 90% poverty index. I have with me Carrie Sanders, who's my dynamic literacy interventionist, and she's been at Dunston longer than I have, doing a wonderful job there. So we'll take a look at our continuous improvement cycle. We plan based on analyzing our strand data for MAP. We analyze our disaggregated data for SE Ready. We collaborate with weekly teacher curricular teams, and we organize for a cross-grade level articulation focus. We do this by developing our SMART goals with our leadership team, create areas of focus for each grade level. We refine our instructional strategies, and we provide differentiated professional development based on teacher ability levels and needs. We study by monitor progress with Fontes and Pinnell, Ames Web. We use our MAP data, etc. We conduct individual teacher conferences, data conferences with our teachers to monitor and drive instruction. And then we monitor trends across grade levels as well. We act by scaling effective practices. If it works for one, we make sure that we continue that across the grade levels. We adjust or continue low to no gain practices. And then we refine or we define our strategic plan based on this model. First, looking at our CD students, because that's very important if we're going to make the gains that we need to make by 3rd grade. We're looking at the growth of our CD students, how well they increase in percent scoring at Tier 1. And that's where we want our students to be at Tier 1. We use this in using my IGDs, which is my individual growth development indicators, the assessment that's given for our 4-year-olds. And we're comparing our data with CCSD. Just to name a few, if you look at rhyming, 20.7% of students in CCSD scored at Tier 1 in the fall. 60.1% scored at Tier 1 in the spring for a gain of 39%. Dunston started at a mere 2.6% in the fall, ending at 57.7% for a gain of 55% in rhyming. And if you look at sound identification, 18.9 in the fall for CCSD, finishing in the spring at 50.5% for an increase of 32%. Dunston started at 6.1% in the fall, ending at 46.9 for a gain or increase of 41%. And then if we move over to math and looking at math number naming, for instance, 20.4% of students in CCSD in the fall scored at Tier 1 and ended the year at 59.2% for a gain of 39%. Dunston started at 0 students in the fall. We ended at 44.1% in the spring for a gain of 44%. Another is oral counting, 28.3 in the fall for CCSD, finishing the year at 71.9 for a gain of 44%. Dunston started at only 5.3% in the fall ending at 66.7 for a gain of 61%. As you can see, that my AD's results indicate that while Dunston had fewer CD students at Tier 1 in the fall compared to their counterparts in CCSD, Dunston's growth was higher in all areas and significantly higher in rhyming, sound identification, one-to-one correspondence, and oral counting. Moving to our MAP data, we looked at the 2-year trend of those students making 1 year's growth, MAP growth in reading. In 2016, 62.7, 2017, 57.4, for a slight decrease of 5.3%. And in the area of math, making 1 year's growth, 52.4% in 2016, 56.0% in 2017, for an increase, a slight increase, nevertheless, 3.6%. And then comparative data, we decided to compare Dunston to CCSD, Meeting Street Academy, Stono Park, and Goodwin. Making 1 year's growth, CCSD 56.2%, Meeting Street Academy 52.2%, Stono Park 49.8%, Goodwin 50.4%, and Dunston 57.4% in the area of reading. Very proud of that. Looking at math, 1 year's growth, CCSD 53.1%, Meeting Street Academy 77.3%, Stono Park 51.5%, Goodwin 48.4%, and Dunston at 56.0% in math. Moving on to SC Ready, keep in mind that Dunston only has one tested grade, so we don't have that room for improvement. It's only 3rd grade for us. So in SC Ready, grade 3, 2016, 29.1% scored meets or exceed. 2017, 21.1% for a decrease of 8%. In math, 51.9% scored meet or exceed in 2016, 44.8% scored meets or exceed, with a decrease of 7.1%. And then compared to CCSD and the state in the area of ELA for SC Ready, the district had 45.6% scoring meets or exceed. The state 40.0%, Dunston 21.1%. SC Ready in math, CCSD 45.7%, the state 42.1%, for Dunston 44.8%. When we looked closely at our MAP data, we found that grades 1 and 2 were the strongest, had the strongest growth in reading MAP. 59% of our 1st graders and 60% of our 2nd graders meeting their target growth in the area of reading. And then grades 1 and 3 were the strongest, had the strongest growth in MAP, with 69.7% of our 1st graders and 64.9% of our 3rd graders meeting their target growth. And with SC Ready, Dunston outperformed the state in the area of math and performed slightly below CCSD with a difference of 0.9% on SC Ready in math. Dunston's ELA scores indicate an area of improvement, particularly in the area of text-dependent analysis, where students have to create responses based on evidence in the text, and they have to justify the evidence provided. So that's been an area of challenge for us. From there, we develop our SMART goals, and that's to increase the percentage of students in grades 1 through 3 meeting or exceeding 1 year's growth by 5% or higher. We always shoot for higher, of course, as indicated on the reading map by spring 2018. And the same percentage for math, but it includes kindergarten, as kindergarten participate in MAP testing. So we want to increase both by 5% by spring of 2018. We also want to increase the percentage of students scoring at least 10 more points on the text-dependent analysis by 5% according to SC Ready by spring testing. And one of our challenges also is to reduce the truancy rate of students in grades pre-K through 3rd grade by spring of 2018. We've discussed we've discussed all of our challenges, all of our strengths and weaknesses with the leadership team, our grade level teams, Title I and PTA moving forward. Some of our high yield strategies that we're implementing, of course, we're piloting the Bridges program this year. We're utilizing a math interventionist to support targeted students based on the data and teacher input. And of course, we do as much as possible, integrate math across the curriculum, providing real world experiences, applications for our children. In the area of reading, of course, you saw how strong our scores are at first grade. And it's because of the diligent work of our literacy interventionists to support targeted students based on the data and text reading levels. And we also implement a 3 to 5 week sustained residency where our reading coach works diligently with new teachers and teachers in need of improvement in order to implement flexible guided reading groups. And of course, we do a lot with analyzing common assessments and providing PD based on the needs of our teachers. In reading, we're implementing Walk to Write to address specific skills and really work on text-dependent analysis. And of course, we're incorporating the writing workshop framework along with what we found to be effective for us, and that's 4 square writing techniques in the classroom. In the area of truancy, we have implemented a parent sign-in where our parents are required to come in, and that provides the opportunity to conference with those parents. We conduct frequent home visits, a lot of home visits to not only verify residency, but to see how we can support parents in order to stabilize attendance at our school. We offer a lot of student incentives. We found that if we do it from the inside, if we motivate our students from the inside, they will then encourage their parents to get them to school and do other things. And the parents, they come. My child said they had to come to school today. So we're we find that to work for us. We can't control the outside, but we can control what goes on in the inside. And our progress monitoring tools, my ADs, we continue to do that at CD. We look at Ames Web, reading, and math for us. Fountas and Pinnell, definitely with the text reading levels, and of course continue to use math. Our multi-tiered systems of support meetings are held weekly based on identified students and also monthly to address school-wide needs. We hold monthly leadership team meetings, monthly literacy and numeracy team meetings, and of course our weekly curricular team meetings to address a lot of curriculum issues as well as behavior in that. So we know that academics remain our priority. We know that behavior has to be maintained and has to be at a point where teachers can teach. We know that it's very important to have consistency and continuity across grade levels throughout the school. We know that data drives instruction, so we have to constantly, on a regular basis, collaborate to provide the needs of our students, whether they're below grade level or above grade level. And we have to maintain expectations of excellence, and that's for everyone, for all of us to make it happen at Dunston. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we ask questions for
We can
principal
look
or
at
at the end?
this section then.
It might go faster if you write your questions down and we just go through, and then we'll be glad to go back to anything you have a question about.
Okay, so write your questions down.
I wrote down 15 already.
Well, you and Cindy can fight over how many you have. All right, come back.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Then one for Todd.
Appreciate having the opportunity to come and share a little bit about Moultrie this afternoon. Moultrie has 800 students. This is my second year as principal. Last year, first, I was interim for a good portion of it. And we have 50 certified staff members in the building, all of which have, on average, 10 to 15 years of tenure. So it's a school with a lot of history, a lot of invested teachers. So the continuous improvement cycle for us, very similar to Ms. Malone. We use map data to drive a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis, from scheduling students to what we are offering in terms of professional development for our teachers. We do allow map data to do a lot of that for us because we believe very firmly in what that data can tell us, reaching out and finding where the kids are and what we need to provide them. We meet with our MTSS team every other week to review that map data, as well as to review 360, behavior, think of social, emotional needs of our students. We developed our SMART goals to address reading and math. And then our third SMART goal was to improve the overall school climate and culture. We are creating areas of focus broken down by each grade level. Every single grade level has something unique about it, and the students are all very different. Our sixth grade need a lot of math intervention, and our eighth grade need a lot of social emotional intervention. So it's just different depending on them. We are constantly reviewing the MAP assessments. As I just told you, we are getting into the digital content usage. It is, we're a second half team at Moultrie, so we're gonna, I'll share with you a little bit more about that in just a second. Individual conferences with our parents and our students went very well in the fall. It gave us a great opportunity to get to the families' homes and bring them in to see where their students were and what they could do to support us from home. And we're really just looking at each one of our systems to figure out which is effective and which are not. So the way I broke down the data, I included ELA for both SC Ready as well as the one-year growth, and I've compared us to similar schools in the district, that being Cario and Lang. So for SC Ready ELA in 2016, the year before got there, their percentage of students meeting exceeding expectations was 68. Last year we went to 68.8, so a 0.8 improvement, we'll take it. In MAP growth, in 2016, 54.9% of our students made a one-year growth, and last year we jumped up to 63.1, which is an improvement of 8%. How that compares to Cario and Lang for SC Ready, Moultrie 69%, as I said. Lang and Cario were both at 65%. So we were slightly ahead of those two, but in math, Cario handed it to us. So we look to Cario as a school where we want to copy what's working well for them. If you want to flip to that next page there. For math, 2016, 61.1% met exceeded in SC Ready. Last year we jumped to 63.6%, and our growth for MAP, we went from 52% meeting the goal to 64%, which was a 12% improvement. Again, we were doing a lot of schedule adjustments. We were moving kids from one team to the other team based on where they were, what they needed, and we saw a lot of really great improvements. It wasn't static. We moved as our kids' needs changed. Cario, we have a very healthy competition. In fact, Ms. Randall's sitting behind me taking notes, so she can try and, here she is. But so they were at 70% for, or excuse me, yeah, 70% for their meet exceeds for math. Moultrie was at 64% and Lang was at 62%. So Ms. Randall and everybody else in the middle school learning community are very collaborative. We're sharing ideas, and Ms. Randall got me interested in the digital content. So I'm now officially on that bandwagon. Next slide, please. So the comparison for us and Lang, everything's up there as I just went through with the SC Ready, but in MAP growth, we made some terrific improvements, 63.1% for reading, 64% for the math, and you can see how we stack up against Lang and Cario there. So our kids did really, really well last year. We know that there are some specific issues in each grade level, which we use not only MAP data, but also the assessments for SC Ready to make some scheduling changes with our teachers, moving them to content maybe they felt a little strong in or stronger. And right now we are coaching some new teachers in with math and ELA in 2 of our grade levels. So using data to make those informed decisions has been helpful for us. SMART goals, 70%. We want to jump up to 70% of our students meeting that one-year growth in both math and ELA. But a big goal for us this year is also to just improve the overall climate and culture of the building with our students. So we put a lot of emphasis on rolling out Pbis this year, and the number of referrals has drastically declined from last year compared to this year. We're doing some great quarterly celebrations with our kids. Just had one recently where Kona Ice came out, and any kid that didn't have a office managed or teacher managed referral have to take part in that celebration. Every month restarts, so they have an opportunity to participate the next time, and the kids really like that. So all these goals, everything that we're talking about today, was developed not only by our school's leadership team, our MTSS, but also shared out with our SIC and PTA. All of our meetings take place in our data room, and as we're talking about the students, everything that we need to know about that student is right there. So I'm a systems person, not so much a programs person, so every decision that we make has to have the data to support it. Finally, some of the, they skipped two maybe?
Yeah, she skipped one.
It's very
You know, going through the different high yield strategies here, I won't read all of them, but the ones that have made the biggest impact for us at Moultrie, the flexible scheduling, meaning we're changing kids whenever. We changed a kid yesterday from one class to the next to get them grouped a little bit tighter. Our teachers have an enormously hard job of differentiating instruction between 30 kids, so if we group them a little bit tighter and they're not having to differentiate between such wide ranges, we're really seeing that as an impact. The class size is also determined based on student need to the best of our ability. We work with what we have. With reading and writing, I added a 0.8 creative writing teacher last year. This creative writing teacher teaches 2 exploratory periods per grade level, one of which is the fun exploratory, the journalism, the poems, the newspaper. The other exploratory is for students that are right on that bubble, that we're grabbing to try and move from approaches to meets, or from does not meet to approaches. So there are kids just right there on the line. It's an opportunity to have some fun while strengthening their writing skills. Our targeted intervention group, for those in the bottom 20%, this is something brand new that we just started. We have an amazingly competitive staff, and 19 of them volunteered to give up one of their planning periods 2 to 3 times a week to meet with anywhere between 8 to 10 students, and that is a mix of direct instruction with digital content. So the folks from Alex and Chief 3000 are coming out for a 2-day PD to get everybody that has not yet implemented the digital content in their classrooms, either for sub-plans or homework or supplement enrichment material, to do it a little bit more. So these, the kids have all the incentives in the world to go there. We asked them what they wanted, what would get them excited to come, and it was a pass to sit wherever they wanted to at lunch, so it didn't even cost us anything. So they're showing up, they enjoy it, and optimistic that we'll see some big turns. Looking at our winter map data that was shared with me a couple of weeks ago, it's comparable to where we were. It's not at all where I want to be, but we are definitely a second half team, as I mentioned earlier, and I think that with these, so if we continue these supports, and if we get this, the bottom 20% enrichment courses up and rolling, we're going to see the numbers we want to see. To keep us in line with moving towards our goal, again, we talked about, you know, the map assessments are big with us. Our MTSS meets every other week. We're looking at Review 360, the numbers of referrals that our students are receiving, or classroom referrals that our teachers are writing. We'll look at the digital content usage reports, and we'll share those out in our monthly literacy team meetings, SIC, PTO, and then I meet monthly with each grade level as a whole, and then individually with the content. So I'll meet with the math teachers, the ELA teachers, again, in that data room, going over all this report stuff. That's everything for me. Fly through that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Afternoon, board. I'm Jeremy Carrick, principal at Dahle High School. I brought with me Barbara Grigsby. She's a 26-year educator, been at Dahle High School since 1992. She served as a special education teacher.
Hey, Charles ain't that bad.
She's 26 years old.
and also working specifically with us right now in our Success Academy and working with some of our most at-risk students. So she's kind of like a graduation specialist for us. So you can talk to her about that in a little bit as well. I just want to go over some of our data and what kind of things we're working on this year. So our PDSA perspective really is looking at that first bullet. The Plan Do Study Act is happening primarily through our focus teams and those collaborative teacher meetings. So we have kind of restructured into 3 focus teams this year. That's a climate and culture focus team, which Ms. Grigsby is the chairperson over, our curriculum and innovation, and our academic intervention, kind of like that MTSS focus team. So that develops and drives a lot of our continuous improvement at Stahl High School. We meet monthly for those. In addition to that, we meet with our professional learning communities, which I'll address a few other times, where we can kind of normalize and identify and drive effective instructional practices through those course-like professional learning community meetings. Just to look at some of our demographic data, we're relatively stable. What we're seeing racially is a decline in our African American percentage. Everything is really increasing numerically. Our numbers in all categories are going up, but we're seeing an increase percentage-wise of Hispanic population and a decrease in African American percentage of our population. That's just kind of a trend that's occurred that is continuing. We're in that 29-30% Hispanic this year, and more like 55% African American this year. So that trend's kind of continuing. You can see our enrollment data there for the past 3 years, as well as our poverty index, which has remained relatively stable. And then also I'll put on there our graduation rate, which is lower than we'd like to see it, but kind of hovering right in that mid 60% range. And that's one of our goals that we'll address. Our end of course trend data, I just wanted to look at those broken apart by subgroup. So that's looking at the last 3 years. And you can see kind of a marked drop. If you guys have looked at EOC data across the state or across the district, as we've aligned our EOC exams and those curves to college and career readiness indicators, we saw that kind of 10-point drop, primarily affecting English and math right now. What I concluded for you guys today is just kind of your overall test, just to kind of minimize the amount of numbers that we're looking at this point, but also just wanted to kind of put up there in view when that's looking at our core content areas, the achievement gap that we still see between our African American Hispanic students versus our white students. Also put our composite ACT score. We have a heavy focus, as I think most high schools that you're going to discuss or talk with, looking at college and career readiness. So that ACT score is really that measurement of college readiness for our students as they exit RB Stahl High School. Really proud of our growth that we've seen over the past 3 years, going up by a measure of 0.6 and then 0.4, which are statistically significant growth over the last 2 years, which we're proud of. And I compared this with a couple schools like ours, one inside of our district, St. John's High School, and then one outside of our district, Georgetown High School, just to kind of see how we're doing inside and outside of our district in terms of ACT score. But we've got some strategies that I think are really going to continue to increase that college readiness for our students. So I expect to see continued growth, and we'll see in our goal setting, I expect to be over 16 as an average composite score for our students this year. On a high note to end, some of our statistics is our advanced placement participation, really seeing growth on that top end spectrum of our students. The 2 bars on that chart are the number of AP exams passed, and then the second bar is the passage rate. So we saw ourselves exceed state and national averages in students that are earning AP scores, but that gave us an overall 51.1% of our students passing AP exams. I again chose Georgetown as a comparative school for us because it's a school like ours in regards to poverty index, but I chose West Ashley High School because St. John's, just based on student population, when we look at number of tests passed, was too small to really be a good comparator. So West Ashley has similar, just a couple hundred students more than us, and so we looked at a little bit lesser in terms of number of exams passed, but also seeing a higher passage rate of our students taking and engaging in advanced placement and college-ready coursework. Some of the bullet points I put on there just to highlight is we're a part of National Math and Science Initiative grant this year, which saw us really expand our percentage of students that are engaging in that rigorous coursework from 135 to 331. So I may see a drop in that passage rate this year with such a wide expansion, but I expect to see that number of students that are earning and demonstrating college readiness increase. So I expect to be as much as or higher than West Ashley next year, or what they had this past year. So expect to be well over 100 AP exam score earning 3 or higher, but we may see a drop in that passage rate a little bit as we're continuing to push and expand students to take rigorous college-ready coursework. We currently offer 13 advanced placement courses this year, but we're expanding AP Statistics and AP Environmental Science next year, so we'll have 15 AP offerings for next year. So our goals, just focused on 3 of them for us, seeing that graduation rate, that on-time graduation rate continue to increase, 63.8 to 66.8, and I really wouldn't mind that being over 70%, but we're putting a lot of energy and emphasis on increasing that graduation rate. Raising the percentage of students prepared for college by increasing our ACT score from 15.6 to 16.4, and seeing the percentage of students passing our end-of-course exams increase from 54.1 to 53.5% this school year. Our strategies and goals to make that happen academically, when we look at those EOC scores, really developing a really comprehensive professional development plan to build capacity within our teachers, and do that through those professional learning communities to analyze data, drive instruction, and see the overall performance across the entire school increase. When we look at those ACT scores and developing college readiness, SOAP is a program that we've implemented this year, that we're in our first year of implementation. I expect to see some significant growth from the implementation of that. That's working through grades 9 through 12, giving students exposure to an ACT-like assessment, which is often the kids' first timed assessment they're ever going to take. So when that doesn't happen until their 3rd year in high school, and they take that first timed assessment, you're going to see an implementation lag or a challenge by not having exposure to that. So seeing students engage really in 3 ACT-style exams in their 9th grade year, again in their 10th grade year, are going to see much more prepared students. What we also are able to derive from that is college readiness data standards, and see gaps that we're missing, that we're not hitting, because they're not perfectly aligned between your state standards and your college readiness standards. So I think we're going to see some areas of gap that our state standards aren't covering, that our ACT and college readiness standards are hitting. That closing up, I think we'll also be able to see our students excel and be more competitive in that college readiness indicator. Also a focus from our NIMSY grant on increasing the number of students and pushing students to enroll in honors and AP coursework. So really pushing students to challenge them to get into those pre-AP and AP courses, and that's going to be what is really going to ask them to do the level of rigor work that they're going to be expected to do when they get to college. Ms. Grayson? I was going to have her speak towards Sue that are specifically related to her, our climate and culture and our graduation rate.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having us. I'm always excited to talk about Dahle High School because I've been there for quite some time. I've been there over the years, and I've seen the change in attitudes and behaviors of students since I've been there. So one initiative that we started at Dahle High School, we implemented Capturing Kids' Heart. We're in our going into our 6th year of implementation. It totally changed the culture of our school. It changed how students behaved. It's changed how they interact with each other. It's changed how they interacted with their teachers. Teachers are able to teach. Students are able to learn, and that's so important. Our students are very inviting now. They have developed pride in their behavior, pride in managing their own behavior, and pride in inviting others into their classrooms and sharing what we're doing there. Before we implemented Capturing Kids' Hearts, our students would not engage in conversation with strangers. They would not initiate conversation with strangers. Now they initiate conversation when you come into the building. They greet you with a handshake. They give you eye contact. And they are excited to tell you about what's going on in their world at Dahle High School. Another thing that we've initiated at Dahle High School is our at-risk students. We have students that were at risk of dropping out. We had students that weren't successful in class, but they were continuing to come, they were continuing to fail. We have students that were just the socialites. So they were coming just to socialize. So Mr. Carrick is the brainchild of what we created called Success Academy. And this identified our high flyers in the school. This program has changed the lives of those kids tremendously. Our parents could be the biggest cheerleaders of this program, and I wish you could hear from them to tell you what it's done for their students. It's allowed them to earn credits where they were not able to earn credits in the traditional classroom, allowed some of those students to even graduate, and allowed those students to earn English and math credits to get on grade level. We meet with our parents on a regular basis. We've adjusted our time, so sometimes we have 6 o'clock meetings in the mornings, because this allows parents to meet with you so they can get to work. And so they don't mind doing that. So we have early morning meetings, we have late afternoon meetings. Parents are very involved. We communicate with them on a regular basis. Our students even work at home on the weekends. They'll text. We have a text line set up where they can text us and tell us that they need to be moved on or reset. So we do this on the weekends and at night. These students have developed a lot of pride in themselves. I wish I could have them speak to you to tell you what this program has done for them. It's changed their image of themselves. They feel like they can be successful, and they have been. They work very hard, and Success Academy has tremendously changed the lives of the students and the parents.
Thank you. So I just want to set the record straight. Ms. Grigsby does all the heavy lifting with that. I might have had some ideas, but she carries it out. I just highlight our mental health supports that we also offer that help support. So we have Department of Mental Health and MUSC COPE, and as well as Gear Up and Communities in Schools that support us as well for both our climate, culture, and graduation rate. So our progress monitoring for us is in college readiness side, looking at CERT, using that school-wide data to drive the increased mastery of our college readiness standards. MTSS, our multi-tiered systems of support that we implement to also evaluate overall school-wide performance data. And then at that classroom level, professional learning communities that utilize, those are our course-like teams, Algebra 1 teachers, English 1 teachers, that can implement common assessments and use that data to drive instructional practice every day.
Great.
All right. Okay, so now questions.
We have any questions? Anybody written questions down on their little pad? Cindy?
I'm sorry. Oh, the way she looked at me, I was like, oh my gosh, what? You have the teacher look. First off, can we get these things on Google Docs, because we're always trying to reference back to student achievement and student plans, and we need one area where all this is dropped into. So 6 months from now, we can come back and look. Ms. Malone, when will you go to the 5th grade?
I think 1920 after school.
So you're a couple of years away?
Yes.
You're doing a lot of stuff with the map. And did you have any kids grow more than one year?
Yes, we did.
Because you only gave us the 1 year growth.
Yes.
We shouldn't assume that the rest of those didn't grow a year. Some of them exceeded that.
Absolutely.
Excellent, excellent. How long do you think it's going to be before this translates into those state level tests? Because we do such a great job with growth, but then we have what people and parents see as a small percentage hitting the grade level. Mm-hmm. At what point is that going to catch up to where this growth mentality gets the kids to where we see the state mandated tests match what we see in growth?
Yes, you ready? For me, as I said before, because we stop at 3rd grade, I don't have that long historical data to see the improvements that those students will make over time by the time they get to 5th grade. If we'd had them 1 year, it ends for me at 3rd grade.
Right.
So they go on, and you probably see the growth of those students as they move on. One of the other things, for me, when I look specifically at my school, the soft data, I can say in that year, as we see the decline, I had 2 out of 3 new teachers. So it's just a matter of getting used to the curriculum and then really trying to target the students, but for our teachers to understand explicit direct instruction and higher levels of thinking, because we have to move them at higher levels through Webb's depth of knowledge or however we're doing to challenge those students, pinpoint those students who can make those gains, and really work with them. So the stability and the experience level of my teachers also play a factor at that year.
And then the number of years kids are taking those tests, they
absolutely
get okay. That makes sense. I understand, because your school's the first time they've seen it.
Yes.
And so the second time they've seen it, they're already in another school on their data.
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing is with Dahle High School, you talked about the graduation rate, but I think you're talking about the 4-year graduation rate. Can you speak to your 5-year graduation rate or your percentage of students that are on non-diploma track? So it's not 66% of 100% of the kids. What's your percentage that are on non-diploma track?
We have about total population of about 80 students that are a non-diploma track at Dahle High School. So I'd say in any 9GR in any graduation cohort, it's going to be about 20 students, which would be about a little bit less than 10%. I'd say
So
like
about
roughly about
10%,
8 to 10%. Our 5-year graduation rate is consistently about 5% above that. So we're 71% on
Okay.
our 5-year graduation rate.
But you're talking 75% of 90% being the best you could do.
Yeah,
Because if
92.
you're
Let's say
not-
92% just off the top of my head.
Okay,
about-
so, and is the Success Academy, is that courses they take or how they take their courses?
It's Edgenuity. We use the program called Edgenuity, and that's what the students are
Thank
using.
you, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? Yes.
Can I go first?
No, I'm good.
First of all, thank you guys for the presentation. I have questions for everybody, so I don't know where to start. Since Ms. Malone started first, I'm going to come back to you. So at Dahle High School, what percentage of your students coming to you are reading on grade level and or below grade level? Do you know?
On grade level versus below grade level?
Yes, sir.
I would say I don't want to.
We can get it for you
Yeah,
though,
yeah, I don't
because
wanna give a-
we ran the Lexile data for the 9th grade, the current 9th graders
For
based on their
17,
8th grade results, and principals got that, so we'll be glad to get it for you.
Majority not on grade level. I mean,
Majority not?
yeah.
Okay, because obviously that makes a huge difference when you look at ACT scores and EOC
Four-year
scores,
graduation
four-year
rate.
graduation rate, things like that. So,
Yep.
I mean, if you're going to do, and you mentioned some other schools that you were doing comparatives with, like Georgetown High or whatever. I think if you're going to do a true apples to apples comparison, not only should it be a school that mirrors yours in population and in diversity, but it also should mirror your school with the number of students who are on grade level reading. Because I think if you're going to do apples, you got to do apple red to red, not red to green. And so that information would be impactful. What's your teacher turnover? I know you haven't been there very long, but how many teachers have you lost since you've been there?
Going a couple years back, it used to be about 25 teachers, but
Here?
yeah.
That's before you got there, right?
Out of about 70 teachers.
You've been there 15
So
years?
that's slowed significantly. Like last year, only lost 6 teachers out of 80. So that kind of tide had stopped.
System principal.
30 to some percent, down to about
Yeah,
8%.
yeah. So our teacher retention has gone significantly up, and I think that a
Yeah,
lot of that
before they knew
cultural.
losing.
I'm going to be asking the other two
Yeah.
principals the same question, so you guys.
Yeah, so that retention has last year, that was something that we really focused on as well, and saw significant growth. So I felt great to kind of bring basically the whole team back this year, and looking that same way as far as I can tell right now this year. We got 2 teachers going back to college, but really about 4 at this point that I know of.
And if you had to, kind of putting you on the spot here, but if you
Go
had
for it.
to identify an area of weakness or concern as it pertains to student data and student performance, what would it be?
The challenge that I hear from my teachers, and it didn't make it into this presentation, is, and Ms. Dunstan presented about it as well, is truancy. So really working, I've put some work with been working with our DAP, and they've supported us this year, but kind of getting the hold of that plays a huge role in performance in the classroom. So my teachers are saying, hey, my students are progressing and they're moving. The students I'm struggling with are the ones that aren't coming to school consistently. And then obviously that's going to have a detrimental effect on graduation rate. So putting concerted efforts at the high school level and having students that are above age on their grade level when they come into high school makes an impact, because maybe they're turning 17 in the middle of their second year of high school in some cases. And so increasing that or decreasing that attendance issues and truancy it didn't make it in my presentation, but one other thing that I'm focused on a lot is trying to reduce and address and decrease truancy.
Okay. How about your vertical articulation with your middle and elementary schools? As the kids are coming into the high school, have you guys, has there been a lot of information and synergy centered around where the students are coming from, what they're bringing with them when they get to you, and then how do you continue to build on what maybe they have been receiving or not, and or filling in the gap and providing the kind of support that they need? Has there been a lot of that?
I wouldn't say a lot the way I would describe it. Definitely there's collaboration between our middle schools. Our primary feeders are coming out of Zucker and Northwoods. So I know those teachers, and I've actually had a couple counselors move up that were at the middle grades. So I know that we have the collaboration there. We don't get together as faculty together and collaborate, but we have in the past. I mean, in my time there, we've done that several times where we kind of open that dialogue. But I think in terms of knowing the standards that they're mastering at the middle grades, we're aware of that and just communicating that down of what these are the essential skills that we need. We met with them just last month as we start this registration process, but that continually kind of reiterates the expectations of this is what they need and this is the level of performance to go into these different courses when they get to high school.
Okay, and lastly for you is what's your achievement gap look like?
On the EOCs, it's about 18% that I saw discrepant between all tests, if you just kind of lump those together.
18% between what and what?
Hispanic and African American are very, very similar, and then white, yeah. And interesting enough, I didn't put the demographic data with our graduation rate, but highest graduation rate is with our African American population. Middle is our Hispanic population, and Caucasian as our lowest graduation rate. I know it's the smallest kind of N, it's the smallest number, so it's a little more, it can fluctuate from time to time depending on what 5 or so kids do. But that's how our graduation rate, actually we see the highest graduation rate out of our African American population.
Okay, I appreciate that. Let's come back. I'm going to start with, in your presentation you mentioned differentiated learning. I think I know what you mean, but can you identify and clarify what that means?
Yes, so we would have classes that would have kids scheduled that were in the 99th percentile in math, in the same class that they were scheduled for somebody maybe in the 20th percentile in math. So teaching a classroom with 30 students with that big of a discrepancy is extremely difficult to do. So by tighter or flexible scheduling, I'm just trying to make it just a little bit easier for our teachers to reach everybody, and more effective by doing that.
That's what I figured you meant. What was your teacher? What was your teacher turnover last year?
I hired two new teachers, and I'm hiring 7 this year.
Okay.
With the Terry program ending, I have 4 retiring and 2 are moving out of state.
I got you. And what's your the number or percentage of students reading at or below grade level?
About 50 students per grade level. There's 260 kids per grade level-ish.
And you said how many kids per grade level?
260 to 275.
And you said what percent were we're below?
About 50 kids per grade level.
50 per grade level?
20% or less.
Or less than.
Okay. Any students 2 to 3 years below?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm assuming that those children would make up, because in your presentation you talked about supporting the students on the bottom 20%, so I would then make a leap of faith and say that the children who are 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 years below grade level in reading or in proficiency would then make up that 20%
yes, sir.
Of your students who are at the bottom. So then, what would then be your areas of weakness or concern?
Professional development for the staff, it's not an area of weakness, but just I want to get them as much as humanly possible with effective assessment strategies and how to use all of the tools that we have to help guide the way they're instructing their kids. It's just carving out the time and getting the people in to do that. We've worked with some local schools. We've thrown our money together to bring in people from outside to help us out with that. But just the same thing that I'm sure everybody needs time and money to.
Yeah, right. You didn't mention, I know you mentioned you have about 800 students, about 260 per grade, but you did not mention the diversity of your student population.
80% white, 11% African American, 9% other.
9% other. And what's your achievement gap look like?
It was 80-20, and last year 75-25. So this year what we did a little bit differently to start zoning in on what's going on is that all teachers the class that they did their SLO, or had to be the class with the highest percentage of African American students, or of the 4 classes they teach, which class had an overall the lowest achievement rate between them. So they couldn't, pick one class over the other. It was pretty much.
Gotcha. Do you think that may have been a culture before they kind of get to pick the class they want to teach, or?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't think so.
And I didn't ask you, Karen, but if you could have one new person on your staff, what position would it be?
Because when you answer, it's the only one we're going to get. But no, it's a good question.
No, it's a great question.
Yeah, think about it. Now you think about it. Same question for you, Ms. Malone. Same questions.
Math interventionist.
Math interventionist. Okay. You need to answer before Christmas, right? Ms. Malone, what is Tier 1?
Tier 1 is the level that we would like students to be, where they can receive instruction without a lot of support.
Okay.
They're able to carry on the instruction for that particular grade level more independently than not.
So if a tier, let's say, is from 0 to 100, and that's Tier 1, where would you want the student to be that you feel they wouldn't need that additional support? Would it be at the 70%? Would it be at 69%? Would it be at 53%?
Percent of what?
Well, she said right. In terms of the Tier 1 where students need to be, I was just trying to give myself a rubric. If that is 0 to 100, where would a student need to be as far as the Tier 1 is concerned, to try to give myself some parameters on it? Where would a student need to be where you feel that student wouldn't necessarily need additional support or intervention, knowing that they kind of grasp what's going on and can then continue to move on without additional support?
Yes, I'll let my interventionist.
Well, based on NWEA, which is where we take our math test, they consider the 60th percentile and above as a Tier 1.
Okay.
And that's kindergarten ready or whatever, right? Or no?
It's grade level ready.
Grade level, okay, good.
When we look at intervention students, it's completely different. But that's for the average classroom.
Right, okay. Ms. Malone, your areas of concern?
Having very young children, an area of concern is the support that our young children need at that age. As far as we're having to work with a lot with our young parents.
Right.
Because a lot with the young parents, because a lot of our kids have never been to CD or kindergarten.
Right.
So they're coming in behind the 8 ball and really working with our parents to understand how important language is at home, oral language, literacy, that kind of thing. So I have a part-time parent advocate, and she is extraordinary in the relationship that she established with her parents. So if we can build that up coming up, establish that foundation, it's going to take care of a lot of the problems that we have later on. So addressing the truancy, even with some of our little ones, they miss 30 and 40 days out of school. So, we look at that makes a big difference in the instruction. So we have to think about, is it delay or is just absence, with a lot of our children. So just trying to figure out the foundational things to get our students ready.
Are you doing differentiating in your building?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the only way we're going to ever get our students to where they need to be and to target students with specific needs is to differentiate instruction. That's a challenge for our teachers. A lot of times they say they know what differentiation is. Sometimes it looks like, okay, small group, but they're all doing the same thing. Where differentiation actually means looking at where the students are and taking a standard and being able to bump that standard to a simpler level, more concrete level, and taking that same standard and moving it up to more complex, more rigorous type of learning for that child. So that's where the challenge is, and making sure that our teachers understand what true differentiation is and integration, because we have to integrate as well if we're going to really make those learning experiences real for our children. I tell teachers, because our students come from backgrounds where they're not read to, they haven't been exposed to a lot, they don't travel much, they haven't been to a lot of places, but But if we learn to integrate instructions where we give our students quality experiences through learning, writing, reading, and all the content areas, they will more than likely hold on to those experiences that they can build on for future learning. So we're really working on differentiation.
And I have a question, not necessarily for you guys, but I've been told over the years that modeling needs to also take place inside a classroom, where you have not a classroom, you don't have a monolithic kind of classroom where all of the children perform at the same level. If you have differentiating inside the classroom, that the kids who struggle some bit can be supported by those who understand it, and then they can teach in the same way and build. So does that work, or does that exist when there's differentiating in learning, where the children who are in particular classes are kind of all on the same level? But I don't.
We're going to show you, our two Simmons Pinckney teachers are really going to do a deep dive in that. I'd welcome them to answer that if they'd like to. But you're going to hear from two Simmons Pinckney teachers, and they're going to show you where their students are reading and talk about how they're differentiating.
You didn't answer my question.
I don't think that, I don't think they get that narrow to where you don't have that support within that classroom. So I picked two. You gave me enough time to hire two people.
I got
So my first person I would clone Miss Grigsby and get that instructional or that graduation support for my students, and provide that kind of higher tier intervention to really combat graduation rate. My second person I hire is an instructional coach that can work on integrating effectively digital content and technology into the classroom. So there's that tech IC, the instructional coordinator and instructional coach, but helps teachers and new teachers facilitate and integrate instruction.
Ms. Malone?
Yes, I would say in addition to the support outside of the school with mental health and more parent advocacy, that kind of thing, if I had an additional reading interventionist like Ms. Sanders here, who's multi-talented, and flexibility, that they have the flexibility to do what needs to be done. And you have a waiting list of 40 students waiting to receive interventions at a young level, that's tough. And I'm using support staff to try to help that. And if I can have a reading interventionist, I've hired a math interventionist, but because she can't do it all along with my associate teacher, because we have so many little ones coming in, and I have never been to senior kindergarten, they're starting first grade.
Does Angela still work with you?
Yes.
I'm gonna tell you guys, there's a teacher that works in her building who I met. Michael's 9, so Michael might have been 3, and so Ms. Malone was like, this lady is really, really talented. So during the summer before my daughter went to school, Angela, her teacher, worked with my daughter every week. Now Michael was already kind of, whatever, but she still worked with this particular teacher, so I have firsthand knowledge of the kind of staff that Ms. Malone has. Thank you guys for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
I'm sorry.
Reverend Collins, do you have a question?
Yes. Only 19.
You have 19 questions. I don't think we have enough time. Can you narrow it down?
So 17 for Tyler. Mrs. Dunstan. How you doing today?
Fine, how are you?
How many third graders do you have?
Third grade students, I have 76.
76?
Yes.
And how many third grade teachers?
I have,
certified?
I currently have 3.
Okay, so how many per class?
Students per class, so that's about 24, 25, give or take.
Any assistants in third grade? No assistant teachers?
Just a teacher.
Reading coach in third grade?
I do have a reading coach for the school.
For the entire school? How much of that time is spent on the third graders for reading?
Oh, we spend a lot of time with
the coaches. How much time do the coaches spend with the third grade?
Coaches, in fact, in third grade, I had 4 teachers. 2 out of 4 were new to the school, 1 brand new teacher. So the reading coach spent at least 6 weeks at a time. And that first year teacher sustained help with reading. And then she spent a lot of time with a teacher who is not new, but she's no longer here because she was low performing, and she's no longer with us.
So right now you have 1 reading teacher?
Yes.
And third grade.
Did everybody hear what Ms. Malone just said?
What she just said was really important. Would you repeat your last couple of sentences?
For the reading teacher, low performing and they needing more.
Yeah, I started with 4 teachers. I currently have 3 because one of those teachers was low performing and she's no longer with me.
This is third grade, right?
Yes.
A reading teacher or just a teacher?
3rd grade teacher.
Okay.
Good job, Ms. Lawrence.
And Reverend Collins, can you only ask one more because we've been on this an hour?
I've only been a minute.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah, just give me a couple of minutes. I will. Let's be fair to everybody. What I'm getting at is your ELA for 3rd grade. I think you said it was what, 21.1%, and math about 44%. And when the kids go to middle school, especially African American children and Hispanic kids too, but more African American kids, they're way behind in reading and ELA and math. And what I'm getting at is, what do you see as an issue, as a problem? What would it take to fix these kids that are in 3rd grade to get them reading at the par? Because once they get past that, they go into middle school. Well, actually, it's worse for you. It's worse in your case because you don't have 4th grade.
Right.
So they have to leave an environment they're familiar with.
Right.
And go to Northwestern Elementary or some other school and start over. And a lot of times the kids, they regress.
Yeah.
And then in the middle school, they don't get that one-on-one that they need to help their reading skills, and they fall further and further behind. So it becomes an endless cycle that if we don't catch them, the ELA and the reading by 2nd or 3rd grade, it's a high probability we're not going to get them at all. Right. They're going to stay behind all the school career. And this is what I want to get fixed now. What do you think we can do to address that? What would help your school with this 3rd grade reading and ELA?
Ideally, as I said before, to have more support with a reading interventionist, being with so many children on the waiting list as it is. But we're targeting those students. And like I said, my soft data, I had 2 out of 4 new teachers last year. So it's a matter of them getting to know the curriculum, getting to understand just classroom management alone. So for me, it starts at CD, building those children where they need to be, so by the time they get to 3rd grade, they're performing much stronger than they are. So that's one of the things that we're working on to make that happen. But more support for those students as well. And last year, and if you look at across the district for 3rd grades at SE Ready in 2016 with 29.1% of our students, that was relatively high, or it was competitive to the other grade levels. And then the difference, again, having new teachers last year, and for the first time for 3rd graders to get used to taking the test on computers, on Chromebooks, and having to maneuver the screen, so it's a lot of soft factors there that it's hard, that doesn't show up in the numbers, they don't show up in the numbers.
And my last question, then I'll stop, is this, that when you consider that 76 students or so, and 21% meeting the standard, it means about 80% will go off not meeting the standards. And to me, that's striking. And I know your school has a good reputation for that.
That's also based on one assessment.
Right.
SE Ready, that's a one end of the year shot band. That's it.
Yeah, that's not math.
Overtime, when we look overtime at all of the assessments that we've done on our children, the type assessments, the map data from the fall until the spring, SE Ready doesn't get the full picture of what the students could do.
So map shows a higher percentage than SE Ready?
Yes, and it's growth over time. That's just a one-day test.
Yeah, map only measures the progress they made from the last time, right?
Yes.
Right, so SE Ready measures where they are today, regardless, right?
It's just where they are compared to grade level.
On that particular day when they took the test.
Yeah, where they are right then.
Yes.
Right. So, but map is the growth.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, Reverend Collins. And we're going to talk about map next.
We're going to talk
as a point of order, before we go on to the next, per policy, we've got 2 minutes per board member, including your responses. So it's not during a regular board meeting, but during a committee of the whole per policy, we've got 2 minutes, including y'all's responses.
Got the timer going over.
And y'all have been here as long as we've been here, and I got here late today. So we got 2.5 hours left on this agenda today, according to the time.
So we only have 15.
That's almost impossible to do that, Dahle.
We only have 15 minutes for this next set. Thank you for that, for this next map data. Thank you, everybody.
And I want to thank the school for
everybody.
Thank you so much.
If you have more questions, I'm sure you can phone
But Mr. Garrett,
I'm gonna ask the MAP folks to come on board.
Yeah, but this is too important to brush across.
I agree.
To rush over. This is what it's all about here. I mean, the 2 minutes, you can't speak in 2 minutes to learn about that this is. I know you did well, I'm saying, but we got that rule, we're not gonna enforce that. I'm not gonna abide by that. Not when it comes to kids learning. Yeah, no, not that. That's too silly.
So I've got the MAP folks at the table. I'm going to ask Michelle English Watson to set a timer. she's good about keeping us on track. And I'm going to turn it over to these leaders, because not only are the data important, they're important, we've looked at them, but more important, what are we doing about them?
15 minutes.
So I think that bears repeating.
In your folder,
Are you going to
a
now
lot of
discuss
map
what you're
data.
going to do about the data?
Yes, what I said is I brought up the level directors and I brought up assessment, and our job is to marry. We want such a tight alignment between teaching and learning, curriculum and instruction, and assessment that we are constantly progress monitoring. You're going to hear from 2 teachers from Simmons Pinckney, and we're going to talk more about how we're progress monitoring using all the tools we have. But what we want you to hear today, we see bright spots in these data. We moved the needle. Okay? And we are going to have a hard push from now to the end of the year, and they're going to talk about this push and what we're doing to keep that push and keep that attention on it. And when we finish that state test, we talked about this last night. We talk on Sunday evenings every night between like 9 and 11 p.m. We talked about, okay, we finish that state test, make every minute count, let's aim out for next year. Every minute count. So we're going to talk about the data, bright spots, but more importantly, I want you to hear from them in regards to what we're doing. You're up.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So in your folders, you should have a good bit of map data, but we just wanted to highlight a few of the wonderful things that we saw, some bright spots. And you can see up on the board too, when we have one correction, we'll get to. But some of our bright spots were that higher than average percentages of students greater than 50% met, they exceeded their winter MAP growth targets in many grades. In reading, 1st grade, 5th grade, grade 7, and grade 8. In math, kindergarten, and then the second one should be grade 1, not grade 2. Sorry, that's a typo. Grade 7 and grade 8. So those are the percentages of students that were over 50%. So we're excited about that. And then the second bullet is comparing our winter 2018 results to those from winter 2017. It suggests that CCSD made improvements in the percentages of students meeting or exceeding growth targets in readings in grades 1, 4, 5, and 7. And in math, improvements were made in grades 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. So on the first bullet up there, 12 out of 17 categories grew. So we were very excited about that. And in the second one, 9 out of 17 grew. So those are some real bright spots for us. Of course, we're never happy with any of that, and we always want it to be a little bit better. And so the level directors and executive directors are doing a lot of things, and Learning Services, of course, is pushing out a lot of things this year and continuing some things that we started last year. So some of those things are that we had a targeted support team that went to visit 12 schools. We visited those schools with the leadership. We talked about their data. We visited all the classrooms. We were able to sort of glean from them their leadership style, what they were doing in their classrooms, how they were involving teachers, how they were using the data. And I think you heard today from the 3 principals that they are really digging into data and beginning to own that data and understand it and get teachers to own it and understand it too. And I think that's been one of the things that's really helped us this year.
The team then reviewed all of that and then left some positives and some recommendations. And then it's been our job as directors and executive directors to follow up on that and make sure that those recommendations are being followed and checked into, and what we can do to further assist and make things easier for the schools to follow those. So some other things that we've done is there's been a lot more coaching this year. That's been our real emphasis. It's that we are not necessarily their supervisors. We're doing a lot of coaching with our principals and with the teacher leaders. There's been a lot more emphasis this year on student goal setting, making sure every child is setting a goal for what they want to achieve that year, and just calling that into focus for them so that they can do that. Along with that, the mandatory parent conferences in the fall with the student data dashboards, where they were able to see all the data on each child and get those parents in to talk about that and talk about how the families could help in getting children to meet their goals. We've been real excited about the math and phonics pilot that's been going on this year in many schools. Again, with a lot of coaching, a lot of training, and a lot of teacher support as they implement those. And again, a lot of monitoring to see, is it being used with fidelity? Are we seeing any growth in students as we come back around with that to decide, do we expand those projects and pilots? Are they being successful with students? Our reading coaches have done a really great job with ongoing training this year. They've always had a lot of training, but that has continued this year and even a deeper level. And they are being really great about taking it back to the schools and training teachers and working with teachers to implement those great reading and math strategies. We really believe that a lot of the social and emotional learning strategies and initiatives have paid off for us, because if we don't meet those needs of children, they're not going to achieve. That's really important. So that climate in the building, using the second steps, using capturing kids' hearts, all of those things, Pbis, the MTSS systems, all of that has really helped to sort of give everybody a structure of how to help children, how to figure out which children do we even need to help. And so we believe that that climate push has really helped in many of our schools. There's been a lot of OGAP training in math, and that is an ongoing assessment program. And our teachers have really loved it and bought into it. So almost all 4th and 5th grade teachers, and then they've even brought it down to some of the lower grade teachers have taken that training. Again, there's been a lot of push with NWEA, with MAP, to go back to look at that continuum of learning. And if a child is here, what do they need to learn? How do you need to pull them apart in a small group and figure out how to get them to where they need to be? And then lastly, there's been just a huge emphasis on the digital content. The district sort of narrowing down the scope of what is available and what can be used, and then doing a really great job of training our teachers to use it, but not only to use it, but to get the data from it to see where kids are and where they still need help. And we've seen a lot of usage with that as we've gone through the semester.
Okay. And another tool that we use that we've talked about with y'all before is the depth principal evaluation. We do mid-year reviews with all of the principals, Joe, Kim, Kathy, Michelle, and I, and we formalize this process so it's a little more consistent. We've obviously do the mid-year. We just finished those in February and the beginning of March. And that starts with reviewing their academic goal, which is 95% of the time it is a MAP goal. And we reflect on 16-17 data and help them create that goal. And like Kathy said, have a more systemic coaching conversation. You know, it's helping them figure out what we need to do as a response to those data points. We also look at the standards, the artifacts that they've collected, whether they're a partial or they're a full. And then Cindy's really helped us, at least as far as me personally, in crafting like a data protocol, which was what we use with them. We created a Google document for the three of us, and Joe and Kim, as far as everything we wanted to hit with every single principal. And it was from how many COTs have you completed? Did you do your preliminary evaluations, your Title I crate, your spending? that hits the effective management piece, just everything that we feel like needs to be emphasized. And then we segued into the data conversation. So it was kind of broken into two, like housekeeping, making sure that we have all of our ducks in a row per se, and then looking at the data and helping them identify patterns in their data, as Kathy said, the digital content and how they're using that, differentiation. And I also liked the last two questions was, how can I help you? Tell kind of like how y'all do to the principals when they come. What are your barriers and how can we help you with that? And then also concrete next steps. What are our 2 to 3 big pushes between now and the end of the year to help all students? So I think we've been really pleased with the mid-year process.
All right. Okay, so to piggyback on what was said earlier about digital content, we have a heavy focus on digital content, and that was a part of the conversation, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, with our principals, and not just talking about the digital content and usage, but the models, the way they're being implemented. Like, are you implementing it whole class? If you're doing it station rotation model, and having principals look at in the future how they're going to implement that to use it more effectively. So when we talk about digital content, we're pretty sure you all want to speak about results. So if you have this document, I know you, Michael. If you have this document, you should have had it emailed to you. If not, I can call out some numbers to you. And I want to give you 2 examples when it comes to the digital content. If you look at 7th grade math, I think they said it was emailed to you.
It was in the board packet.
So I'll call out the numbers just in case you want to write them down. So I'm going to start with 7th grade math and give you an example from there, and both of my examples will be from 7th grade math. We have Cario. If you look at Cario at 68%. You all are there?
Are we here or are we on these arrows?
No, this one for middle school.
Got it.
All right. So if you look at Cario at 68%, everyone with me?
Yes.
And then you look down and find the other 68, which is School of the Arts. You look at those 2 68s and see for 7th grade math, those are the highest. Now, I can speak more specifically to Cario. You all are with me seeing those 2 68% highest? Yeah. I can speak more specifically to Cario because Cario, when speaking with Sharon as a part of the mid-year evaluation, I said, what's going on with your 7th grade math? Your numbers are pretty high. She said, those are the teachers that have grabbed a hold of the digital content and are using it effectively. Now, more specifically with her 7th grade math, she has a teacher that's a veteran teacher. Actually, she's a first-year teacher, my apologies. She's the rookie teacher of the year for Cario. And that teacher had the highest percentage of scholars to in the 7th grade for CP classes to meet or exceed 1 year's growth at the winter, on target for that. Now, this teacher, to dive even deeper into her data, had the inclusion class. So she had the inclusion class, a CP levels class, and she had the highest percentage of kids at winter with 1.0 or 1.0 or higher growth on math.
What school was that?
That was Cario. Now, to give you another example,
what does that mean?
That would be EC population.
Education.
Yes, sorry.
We don't know any.
Yes, yes.
What is EC population?
It's special education. Okay. There you go. Sorry. We don't like to use that. We like to see EC. Okay?
All we're asking is that you teach us one set of terms and use it. We're glad to follow. You keep changing them.
CP, you need to spell out.
And CP is college prep. So that's all right. Got it. I should know that we need to tell you all what these acronyms mean. So to give you all another example, because I know you all like to look at the data and look at what's happening with it, sorry.
No, I'm just saying we're almost out of time.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so I'll give you one more example and then I will let Michelle go. So if you want to look, talk about our targeted support schools, we've been speaking about them, today, all day today as well. But if you want to look at math, again, 7th grade math, and you want to look at Northwoods, which is a middle school targeted support school, you want to look at Northwoods. You got Northwoods. Northwoods should be down there with 41%. You want to look at Morningside, that has 51%, and then you want to look at Simmons Pinckney that has 57%. Simmons Pinckney has been implementing, digital content for, a couple of years now, and you see they have the highest percentage with that use of digital content. Now, when you look at Morningside and Northwoods, Morningside, to be more specific about them, we went in as a part of the target support visit, and that was a conversation we had with them, is what are you doing with your digital content? And that coaching that Jennifer spoke about was a great time to say, we need to look at your digital content, how are you implementing it? And what we did at that school is there was an issue with Chromebooks. So we sat down, we divided the Chromebooks up to the ELA and math teachers so we could expose those scholars to digital content. So at the last principals meeting, we're giving away awards to schools that have high digital content usage. Morningside won an award after the targeted support visit, and as you see, they're slowly creeping up, sorry Nate, on Simmons Pinckney because they're really doing it. Now, Northwoods, on the other hand,
Down, Nate, going down.
Northwoods, on the other hand, decided that they wanted to take more of a slower approach, and then after we had the mid-year meeting and she saw the data from Simmons Pinckney and Morningside, she went back in and said, oh no, we need to step up our game with digital content. So the meetings are very productive, and we're seeing a lot of correlation to use of digital content and outcomes on our formative assessment. So I'm going to pass it on to Michelle.
Thank you, Joe. I'm going to close off this portion of the conversation speaking to the lowest performing 20% of students as it relates to overall achievement. As our work revolves around increasing students, growth is not new, it's not novel. Our work has always revolved around moving students. If you would recall, our state report card rating has always had an absolute rating, which is now called achievement, and we had the growth rating, which is now referred to as progress. What is different, what is new, is that this particular instrument, this new framework being pushed out by the state, is accounting for the lowest performing 20% in multiple measures. Those students will count in the absolute achievement rating. They will count twice in the growth rating. And so the push or the concern is amplified in terms of schools making sure that they have a solid plan, purposeful work around moving our boys and girls who are in that bottom quintile. And so the directors and executive directors have given our principals information, our directives, encouragement toward 3 specific action items. We have asked them to make sure they access Data Central, which has a listing of who those bottom 20%, the lowest performing 20% are. Who are those kids? And 2, make sure that you're sharing that information with your leadership teams, your data teams, your MTSS, multi-tier systems of support teams, to recognize or acknowledge, do your continuums of support in the building, in your respective building. Is there a plan for these particular students? What are we doing in these last 90 days to make sure that our boys and girls have an intervention, a program, some layer of support to make sure that they're moving? And then to just show us what that action is or what that plan is. Will it be like Ms. Malone spoke to? Every non-homeroom certified staff member in the building, pulling a small group, making sure that they're getting instruction at their level. So that's the work, some of the work being pushed out by learning services, the executive directors and the directors. Thank you.
Thank you. And we could have allowed the assessment office to review these data with you, but it's really important that the individuals that work with principals most closely and the teaching and learning team understand these data and what they mean. So that's why we flipped it today, but we wouldn't have the data without these ladies. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have?
Thank you very much. That's great.
1 to 2 minutes worth of questions.
I have one question.
Yes.
There's a lot of talk about MET growth target. What does that mean? What's your growth target? Is the growth, can we correlate the growth target to 1 year of education equals 1 year of growth?
So we looked at winter targets. That's really important. We looked at a half year. So if we were to sit down today and take that test, we were to all sit down and take the test, it would level us out. And it's been a long time since I had Algebra 1. Let's just say we're middle school, we're taking the math test. It's going to give us, based on all the millions of students in that database, a target for what typical growth is. And if you can exceed that, you've beat that odds. So we were looking at winter growth, how much growth we should have gotten. At the end of the year, we'll look at the full year's growth.
Okay.
Now, I know you're worried about catch-up growth. I know you are.
More than 1 year.
We are thinking about what are the supports we have to put in place. And I like simple USA Today kind of readership. And I do subscribe to the New York Times. I do subscribe to the Washington Post. However, I do like USA Today. We charted those data in this way so we could scan visually who's getting the most growth. You got that we can look at it by grade level. We can see Dunstan students where they come in. We know how much ground she made up. We also know she had a lot of ground to make up. Her students came in lower than some of the other students in her kindergarten, in her first grades.
So while this makes no sense to us, does this make sense to teachers?
Oh,
It makes sense to our principals.
It's once you understand, it's really.
It makes sense to our principals, and Joe's middle school principals last month said, wow, this is really, maybe it was 2 months ago, this is really cool.
Yeah, because
I really like this, because then they can look at and talk to their neighbors. Excellent. And then the other thing we're scanning these reports, red, yellow, green, stoplight. We want to see green. We want to put these beside the reports next year. We want to see more green, reduce that red. And while, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say also with the 1 point year growth to the 1.5, which is kind of what we were talking about last year, one thing I found to be very powerful in these coaching conversations is even though 70% of your students may have done the 1.0, you also need to look at your fall percentile and your winter percentile for that grade level.
Right.
So when I'm over the shouldering with the principal and I'm looking at reading or I'm looking at math and I say, hey, that's great, the children at Stone Oak Park or whatever, 70%. However, our percentile is still the 28th percentile.
Yeah.
So it allows us to calibrate rigor without, does that make sense?
And by doing that, is that how SC Ready is eventually going to show what the math shows? Is that our students are more on grade level?
There's a linking study, and Ryan Comeback knows that linking. I don't know if he's still in the room. He knows that linking study inside out, and he uses it to predict. We're going to show you Achieve 3000 this afternoon, and I hope the Wando teacher's still here. He uses it to predict in the course. Okay, it's a adaptive digital content.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks. Nice job.
Jennifer Coker, multi-tiered systems review.
It makes like news. Email me your question.
No, I was going to say.
Okay, let's look at that. While they're coming up, let's look at the arrow chart.
Right, exactly. It's like,
Cindy, look at the arrows.
Looking at the arrow chart.
Yeah, well, it's
right, yeah, it's like, so if you had a goal. I don't know, because some
you don't know what the goal is.
Yeah, that's a mess.
But the teachers know the goal.
We don't know where. We don't know about the start.
All right, so we'll pick district, okay, just because it's the top one, okay. So we're talking about the sixth graders. Okay, sixth graders got, they had to get in the fall. I guess they're saying the average kid in Charleston County School District made a 218, and then in the winter, how many months later made 221. So they actually dropped it percentile, up based on nationally normed, I guess. 52nd percentile fall, then they dropped down by 3%, 49% for the sixth graders. And then, but it says, I guess it's 45%. It has really nothing to do with this. It's more just who met their goal, whatever that goal may be.
It isn't their growth goal. It's based on national norms. Nationally, how many kids nationally?
Oh, so it's not the kids' goal.
It's not the kids' goal. It's the national, based on all the kids in the country who took the test.
If we can move,
what hour is that?
if we can move those kids and increase the percentage of students meeting their growth, they're growing.
Yes.
We can move the system, and we'll talk more about that when we do Achieve. But if we can increase this, we work with principals at the beginning of the year. We said let's aim between 60 and 65% at a minimum. So we're just monitoring. Okay, did you grow?
Did you grow? Right.
Did you grow your kids? And we are working on data walls. So we could talk to you for hours, but we won't today. But we'll come back.
But it's grow the individual kid, not
grow the individual kid based upon how nationally they should grow.
But we're normed nationally.
We are normed nationally, correct.
It's not the individual goal that I might have set a 5-point goal. That doesn't matter. It's on these compare how much our kids grew compared
from the last time.
The same kids just like them nationally.
Oh, okay.
So if I scored at 217 in the fall, how much did all the other kids in the country who scored 217 grow?
Okay. All right.
And they know what I should grow. NWE has so many millions of kids in their database. They know if it's 12 points or whatever. They know. And so did they meet it?
It measures our system capacity. It's our system.
Okay.
And it's growth from wherever they were, right? From wherever they were.
And even though we see some high percentages of growth,
it's still from wherever they were.
Yeah. Even though we see that, if that percentile is low, it's proficiency plus growth. And so I had a conversation with the principal last week, and I said, but look at your percentiles. You
Right.
did not move, if you didn't move the needle, so we're watching two things.
There's two things, right, exactly, there's two
And if
things
they're
here.
not moving, we're gonna sit down and where Michelle Simmons, is she in the room? She was in that,
She's coming.
she was in that conversation last week, and we said, hey, and this was a great little opportunity for conversation. We said to the principal, let's look at your percentage meet and growth targets. Well, you've got some work there. Let's look at, well, and the principal said, I have increases in points. I said, don't talk about the points. Did you move that needle on that percentile?
Yes.
And then the principal, we asked the strategies. Then we went into the content while the principal was sitting there. We pulled up the reports and said, I can see where your kids are and if you're using it. So we're like safety checks.
So we need to
checks and
educate, make
balances.
sure that all principals understand that a point move doesn't mean, because you could have a
Point
higher point
moves-
and still be in the same percentile
That's
6 months later.
exactly right.
Or a lower
Or lower, yeah, or lower.
Because it's a ladder.
Because you're supposed to be growing.
That's all. Just
Or like Miss
That's right.
Malone said, she said there's X number of her kids that showed 1 year's growth.
Right.
But she also could speak to the kids that she knew that grew more than 1 year last year. So the principals ought to, they're taking that and should be able to say which kids are growing more than.
But I think what the principals are probably also doing is looking at the areas where they see they've made gains and
Yes.
not necessarily focus on areas of concern. So if I've got, a group of my students doing 1.5 years worth of growth, which is great work,
Yeah.
but the same number of students are not making grade proficiency,
Right.
those are the two. 1 and 1 equals 2. So if you leave the 1 away and so look at the growth we have, the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, well that means that those students were behind grade level when you got them.
Sure, right.
You
Yeah.
moved them where they needed to go. You expected to do 180 days worth of instruction, 1 year's worth of growth.
Yep.
You exceeded that, but we still did not
Still
meet
behind.
the mark on proficiency.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying we need to rev that up because those numbers look good.
Right.
But embedded in those numbers are subgroups. And how are the subgroups doing in that work?
Right.
In those particular schools? And are principals really understanding exactly how deliberate instruction must be to move those numbers? And if they don't understand that, we need to have a conversation. Because they gotta understand that.
Right, and data walls, and Michael, you know this from last year, they no longer talk about grades, it's every student's name is on the data wall. So they're not even breaking it down into certain groups of students,
Right.
they're breaking it
We're
down
trying to
to
move.
each student.
Right.
Yep, all right. Let's
All
move
right.
on.
Okay, so
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn this over to Jen Coker and her team.
So, I know y'all have heard me a lot, so this time we decided to bring some of the people who do the work in the field to kind of explain the work of our department. So, the first slide just kind of allows you to see that this is a national model for safe and supportive schools, and you can see all the various things that really need to be in place for schools to be safe and supportive. And our work from the Department of Alternative Programs fits in all of these various categories. And so we think this is a really good representation of what it takes for schools to have safe and supportive environments. So I've shown this slide to y'all before, and I always want to put it back in front of you because we have to start thinking that behavior is a curriculum that we can teach. Just like we teach reading, just like we teach math, just like we teach swimming, we can teach behavior. And there are curricular approaches to behavior. And so we're going to go through some of those today. But there's a real mindset shift that has to occur to understand that students don't come necessarily to the table with all the things we need. And that can be as at 4-year-old or 14 years old that we can still teach them behavior and how to assimilate into the school and have positive behavior. So that's my favorite slide. So earlier you saw the triangle on its side, which is up in the corner, which is how we refer to our groups for academics a lot. When we talk about behavior, we sometimes just talk about this triangle. So what we're focusing on today would be the social-emotional supports that we're providing to schools. And so in our triangle, it's in tiers just like the one that's on its side. So the green zones are the same. That's what we do for all students. And you can see at the bottom on the left, we talk about Tier 1. Tier 1 is what we do for all kids. What we do in our schools to teach them math, to teach them reading, to teach them behavior. So it includes academic standards. We have a set of standards to teach reading in first grade. We should also have a set of standards on what behavior we teach in first grade. And so we have some various steps that we've put in place in the last 2 years to really make sure that all of our students at Tier 1 are receiving appropriate curriculum for behavior. And so you can see those things listed there. Today we're going to talk about Pbis, which is Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, and second step. And we're also then going to talk for a little bit about some of the work that we do for kids on Tier 2 and 3, which would be kids who aren't really making it with the supports we put on Tier 1. So the team is here to talk about their specific roles. They'll introduce themselves and tell you what their role is before they move into their section. And we're just going to run through it, and we'll take your questions at the end. So let me move this forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Erin Matheson. I'm a school climate coach, and I work with 9 of our area high schools. And I work with them implementing Pbis, or Positive Behavior Intervention Supports. So I'm going to speak to this slide today. Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports is, or Pbis, is a broad range of systemic and tiered interventions, strategies that are preventative, proactive, positive, predictable, and instructional. What this slide is showing us today are the 4 overarching elements around Pbis. These elements are systems, practices, data, and outcomes. So the systems are what we do, so these are the standard structures that support staff and instruction school-wide. The practices are how we do what we do. So these are how we are teaching all students school-wide behaviors and those expectations, for example. The data is the evidence that derives the decision-making across all of the tiers. It is how we know the what, our systems, and the how, our practices, are actually working. By supporting staff and student behaviors and using database problem solving, systems, practices, and data work together to produce students that are socially competent and high achieving.
Good afternoon. I am Tasha Joyner, and I support 3 of our top talent middle schools and 2 of our top talent high schools. So what we're going to talk about is the 8 components of the basics of Pbis. So first and foremost, we know that we have the support of our school leadership with this Pbis school-wide system. Second, we have a leadership team that is comprised of all of the important personnel that are involved in the decision-making that's going on in the building. What our curriculum is, or our behavior curriculum, is a school-wide expectation, and it is set up in a format of a matrix. And this is how our expectations are taught within the building. Procedures and routines in the classroom and in the other settings are based on the procedures and routines, and they're based off of the matrix. While we're doing this, we want to encourage that positive behavior, and some of the things that we use is in the form of celebrations, positive acknowledgments, tokens, tickets, and positive 4-to-1s. While we're encouraging that positive behavior, we know that we have to discourage that unwanted behavior by doing some pre-correction and also some reteaching, but all of it is based on the matrix. And with anything that we do, we have data collection and we monitor that data to see if those systems are in place and if there are any decisions that we need to make to monitor what is going on in the building. And lastly, we have those classroom practices, which is our classroom management tool, and that is the 8 effective teaching practices. With those school-wide expectations, like we have mentioned, we have our matrices, which is our curriculum for teaching expectations. Just like we have our curriculum for academics, this is our curriculum for teaching that. Within that, we have our adult common language that all teachers are using, and all faculty and all staff, that refers back to that those teaching expectations. Next, we have our rules. It's what it looks like and what it sounds like, so that there is no confusion of what it looks like to stay on the right side of the hallway, and what it sounds like is what we use voice levels. So at a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 3. Then this covers all areas of the school, so in all settings, so what it looks like in the cafeteria, on the buses, in assemblies, and in transitions. And it's designed by a school-based team to coordinate the various supports for our school climate, which brings together all components to include capturing kids' hearts, social-emotional learning, restorative practices, and that it is safe, predictable, and fair for all students.
Hi, I'm Megan Bokina. I'm the School Climate Coordinator. Our implementation plan, so Pbis implementation began in the summer of 2016 with a 2-day full team training for all of our elementary and middle schools. So our elementary and middle schools all across Charleston County are currently in year 2 of implementation. And our high schools received the 2-day team training in the spring of 2017 and began their year 1 of implementation this school year 2017-18. And with that, to support the rollout of Pbis, the school climate coaches have worked with all school teams to help facilitate the completion of a tool called the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, TFI. So the Tiered Fidelity Inventory comes from the Technical Assistance Center, and it's used to provide an efficient measure to gauge that fidelity of implementation and sustainability to Pbis. That Tiered Fidelity Inventory is divided into 3 sections which correlate with the 3 tiers of supports within our schools. And the data presented here shows the district average percentile score for the Tiered Fidelity Inventory at our elementary, middle, and high school level. The blue graph represents the score at elementary and middle for their first administration in the fall of 2016, and then you can see the growth made at both of those levels when administered again in the spring of 2017 in the orange graphs. Research out of the Pbis Technical Assistance Center states that a score of 70% or higher of implementation will result in improved student outcomes overall. So our high schools all completed their first team scoring of the TFI this fall, 2017, and we expect to see significant growth for the high schools as well this spring. And this spring, 2018, all 3 levels will, with a coach, have a coach facilitated administration of this Tiered Fidelity Inventory again.
Hi, I'm Heather Anderson, and I also serve as a district climate coach. I support 8 schools implementing our social and emotional learning curriculum, second step. So CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, and it defines this process through which students and adults acquire and apply knowledges of attitudes and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve goals, have empathy, make and maintain positive relationships, and responsible decision making. These are also known as CASEL's 5 core competencies. See, CASEL provides a unique combination of research, practice, and policy to support high-quality social and emotional learning curriculums. CASEL recognizes second step as a research-based, data-driven curriculum that aligns with CASEL's 5 core competencies. The second step curriculum is a universal, that's that tier 1 we keep talking about, classroom-based program designed to increase the student's school success and decrease problem behaviors by promoting social and emotional wellness and self-regulation. Research states that 40% of students across the country come to our schools chronically disengaged. Students engaged in social and emotional learning gain a 23% increase in social and emotional skills, which equates to being able to work in a group setting, accept, respect, and understand differences, and relate to one another. These are skills that are needed for success in and out of the classroom. Students who come ready to learn using their social and emotional learning skills now show a 13% increase on academic achievement. Students also have a better social behavior and fewer social and emotional conduct problems.
I'm Kim Foxworth. I'm the Director of Early Learning, and I'm here to talk to you about the collaboration between our department and the Department of Alternative Services and Programs. Fostering social and emotional development is an essential part of preparing children for kindergarten. If young children have difficulty sharing or getting along with their peers or adults, the learning is going to suffer. It's critical that we, particularly in early learning years or older years, that we have intentional social skills instruction, just as we do have intentional literacy and numeracy instruction. After reviewing the Review 360 data last year, including the suspension data for 4-year-olds, we realized we need to provide a consistent, intentional social skill instruction across the district. We need and we want all 4K teachers to make sure they're embedding social learning every day. In collaboration with the Department of Alternative Programs and Services, Second Step Early Learning Kits were purchased for all 4K teachers. We provided initial training in August, and we've done a follow-up training in February. Our departments have worked together to provide ongoing implementation support and conduct fidelity observations. As I go into classrooms across the district, it's exciting to see teachers, no matter where I go in the district, using the 4 common rules. They use attentoscopes. If you see children going like this, 4-year-olds going like this, they're using their attentoscopes to focus, make sure they have the attention, and use puppets as an engaging way to act out the lessons or the target skills. Teachers are always referring to second step lessons in other parts of the day. So they may teach it in the morning, but then outside a conflict may occur, and they're calling attention to it at that time. Students are also using those skills when they're interacting with peers and adults. Most importantly, as you'll see in the next slide, the data has shown that it's reduced some challenging behaviors we see in our 4-year program. The most important thing I can tell you is our CD teachers. These are some quotes I've gotten from our CD teachers. There's one up on the slide, but another one. Second Step teaches students how to ask for help, think, speak kindly and appropriately to peers and adults. It's ironic because this morning I was at Mini Hughes and there was a teacher that she moved from 1st grade to CD this year, and one of the things we talked about is how's her second step implementation going, and she was raving on how well it was, and she wished she had it in 1st grade. And it was evident as her students interacted with each other and with me and the adults that second step.
So Kim mentioned the data. So we did have 4K. We have 4K suspensions, and last year in 2016-17. 11% of referrals for 4-year-olds resulted in suspension for challenging behaviors. So this year that's been reduced to 3%, and not just reduced, but the behaviors have been reduced. So we're not seeing the behaviors, and these are very high-level behaviors that would cause a suspension for a 4-year-old. But we're seeing a reduction in even those assaulting teachers.
How many did you say? I'm sorry.
11% of the referrals resulted in a suspension for 4-year-olds. Now, the number is small. It's only about 18 suspensions last year, but that's still too many. So it's been reduced this year to 3% of the referrals resulting in suspension.
How many kids does that equate to?
I think it's 3 or 4 this year.
And you said the behavior change, not necessarily the
I think she said both.
The behaviors have changed, and the suspensions have been reduced based on the behavior changes in the 4-year-olds. Correct.
There are 16 elementary schools that applied for the Second Step pilot program last spring. As climate coaches, we support school-wide tiered implementation of Second Step to include working with teacher and school counselor teams to create best practices, sustainable systems, along with accountability and fidelity of the Second Step curriculum.
So this is a highlight on one of our schools that's implementing. You can see that their no level 1 and 2 referrals last year was 84.4%. It's up this year to 86.8% in that school. We have a brief video that the school prepared for you all. Oh, it's not through the system, is it?
Said the problem.
Can you all hear that?
Yeah. Shameless plug for the funding.
They're already funded, that school's
Use
already
the
funded.
4-year-olds, look it up.
Put that on TV.
I'm saying no to that one.
I also have the privilege of working with a middle school that's implementing Second Step. The new middle school Second Step program is kind of a first of its kind. The social and emotional curriculum is web-based, and it's responsive to both the needs of the student and of the facilitator or the teacher. For each grade, the program is loaded with a year of weekly Second Step lessons, advisory activities, professional learning, and resources such as ways to academically integrate the objectives that they're working on during the week. The middle school curriculum has 4 units: mindsets and goals, values and friendships, emotion management, and peer conflicts. We have a short video.
So, I think we're going to hold the video to make sure we have time at the end. But that graph represents 6th grade teacher managed referrals. They began implementing Second Step in November at Simmons Pinckney, and that's the decrease in referrals in the classroom.
Can she say those four components again?
Yes, ma'am. Mindsets and goals, values and friendships, emotion management, and peer conflicts. And these do differ from the elementary for units as well.
And Simmons Pinckney has made the decision to roll that up to 7th and 8th grade now based on their results with 6th grade. But if we have time, we'll come back to the video from Simmons Pinckney because it's really good too.
Hi, I'm Erin Schroeder. I'm a school climate coach in CCSD. I'm one of the 7 that serve all of the schools in Charleston County. And as you can see on this chart right here, the orange shows how we've supported schools to create safe and supportive environments within the first semester. We support multi-tiered systems of support and positive behavior intervention support teams by systematically reviewing data across all the tiers, and we use the data to support problem solving at each level. We work with individual teachers and grade level teams to provide coaching in a collaborative and supportive manner. We provide practical professional development when necessary to produce results. Climate coaches work diligently alongside teams to support our administrators, teachers, and staff to ensure fidelity, create positive climates, and meet the educational needs of every child.
So when this references this means these are the times y'all are in the schools working with the staff?
Correct.
Hello, I'm Deborah Joseph. I'm a school social worker with the Alternative Schools.
I'm Allison Hemplick. I'm a clinical social worker, and I work in McClellanville, downtown Charleston, and Mount Pleasant schools.
Our children today are victims of many social forces that negatively affect their role as students, and their families are in a state of change. Until their lives are stabilized in whatever form, their unmet physical and emotional needs will continue to interfere with their ability to adjust in school and learn.
Within the Department of Alternative Programs and Services, we currently have 3 school-based social workers who support our top talent schools, and 3 social workers who are organized by region and serve the remainder of the district. As one of the community-based social workers, our job is to collaborate with the multi-tiered system of support and the positive behavior intervention support teams and provide critical supports to students and families. This may include assistance with linking to community service providers, basic needs, financial services, psychoeducation for parents and families regarding mental health diagnoses, the importance of homeschool communication, and regular attendance. We also regularly attend and provide trainings to teachers, schools as a whole, and district-wide professional development in areas such as parent engagement, increasing attendance, and community resources. We also serve to reduce and remove the barriers to education through regular and daily home visits, participation in MTSS and Pbis meetings, individual problem-solving meetings, and collaborate with community agencies to partner with CCSD.
Providing school-based social work services allows us to be a part of the MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support framework, to provide essential information to better understand factors such as cultural, economic, family, health, societal, and other factors that affect a student's performance and behavior. We do many things to help the child as a whole. We do home visits as well, assist with medical needs, provide crisis intervention, and other services. We bridge the gap between the home, school, and community. We participate in special education assessment meetings as well as IEP meetings. We assist parents in accessing and utilizing school and community resources. For example, parenting resources, we help with those economic factors with rent and utility assistance as well. We help with Medicaid applications and referrals for mental health services. So, we are instrumental in furthering the mission of schools to provide a safe, supportive, and inclusive environment for every student and adult in the system. Together, we have served a total of 224 individual students during the first semester and provided services to a total of 148 students via our school-wide and MTSS support.
Good afternoon, I'm Rebecca Bracey, and together with Aaron O'Donnell and Bridget Townley, we are the behavior specialists. When schools make the decision or the determination that they've exhausted all their resources, they will submit a referral to us for our services. And the behavior specialists provide that targeted and intensive intervention for students who are demonstrating Tier 3 behaviors. So that's up at the very, very tippy top of the triangle. So the type of intervention that we provide is direct support to students, teachers, and specific student teams. Sometimes our cases can last a really long time, sometimes up to a year, in order for us to get those interventions into place and up and running smoothly. We also provide consultation for and development for IEP goals, functional behavior assessments, behavior intervention plans, and crisis plans. On a larger scale, we also attend school-based NTSS and Pbis meetings. We provide support and professional development on a school-wide level, and we also provide professional development on a variety of behavioral topics on the district-wide level. And I think it's important to note here that we, the three of us, are available to any school in the district who makes a referral. So we are purposely not assigned to specific schools. We are funded through IDEA, and this is a collaboration between the Department of Alternative Programs and the Department of Exceptional Children. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Because we're out of time, quick questions, anybody? If not, can people direct questions to you?
Absolutely. That's good to know. I mean, the work you're doing is amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Nice job. Nice job. Multi-tiered systems of support, adaptive digital literacy. I'm gonna ask the Simmons Pinckney team to come up, and we're gonna try to go through this quickly to get us back to help with the time. So if they come on up.
Soup and chocolate and crackers.
It's just rotating, just approve it. Come on up. Yeah, pass them out and get the one to each board member.
Good Lord. We keeping these?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we'll leave them in here and I'll take them back.
Well, thank you. Notice I made
just for this evening.
If you would open that textbook up to the sticky note. Open your textbook up to the sticky note, and we're going to move really quickly.
Hey, come on.
If you would open that textbook up to the sticky note, and I'm going to ask Michelle English Watson to introduce this team, and I just want to preface it with, this will be more of a conversation. We can go really quickly to help with the time. You've had a long day, I know. Okay?
Okay. You ready? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you will be hearing from three of our outstanding teachers who will discuss the use of digital content as an instructional tool and the use of Achieve 3000 in their classroom. We have Shirley Ronsley, and Kelsey Baldwin from Simmons Pinckney Middle School, who will present the bulk of this presentation. And then Patrick Martin from Wando High School will discuss the use in his high school, in his classroom as well. Okay? And, okay, so here we have the academic learning time and differentiation visuals. So as students understand the purpose of the lesson and the content of the lesson, it must be meaningful and appropriate for them. So students must be actively engaged in the content, and as a result, the student experiences a high degree of success. No two children are alike, and based on this principle, differentiated teaching and learning is a key to assuring that children have multiple options for taking in information and making sense of the concepts. You heard about differentiated learning throughout many of the presentations, and this is one way that we will see it in action through digital content. So it's effective, and it supports individual and diverse students in the classroom, and the teacher is required to be flexible in the classroom and in the approach so that what children will learn is the content, how the children will learn is the process, and how they will demonstrate their learning is the product. And we will go into, you will see this in this next presentation.
Okay. We've talked and shared information with you about Lexile levels, and I want you to imagine just for a moment that you are a student and you know that your teacher's been having conversations with you about your reading level. Your teacher's also talked with you about what reading level you need for the SAT, ACT. Your teacher's had conversations with you about what it's going to take to be able to read a newspaper, what it's going to take to be able to read a college textbook, whether it's a 2-year college textbook or a 4-year college textbook. Sometimes those 2-year college textbooks are much more rigorous because they have technical vocabulary. If you've ever tried to read an HVAC book, you'll see the vocabulary and the sentence structure. But either way, it takes a very high reading level to be able to work well in those in that textbook, in that resource. So we have 2 students here. They're 4th graders. You have little Juliana with a 450 Lexile, and you have Jaden with a 1050 Lexile. We don't want to put a ceiling on either Juliana or Jaden. We want to grow both of them. So you're going to hear from these teachers about how they grow students no matter their starting point.
Okay. So when you receive your textbooks, I asked you, I said, does it bring back memories when you were in the classroom? Painful? No. So for years, textbooks were seen as the foundation for instruction in American schools and in the classroom. When Cindy and I were in the classroom teaching, basically we taught directly from textbooks. Today, students see themselves as digital natives and the first generation to grow up surrounded by technology like smartphones, tablets, and e-readers. I mean, I have a 4-year-old who will take my cell phone and God knows how she gets into it. I'm like, I thought it was locked, but she's in there and she's downloaded games. Oh, wow. So with the rise of the internet and the online content, teachers have found new sources to support student learning. And digital lessons can present information through dynamic, interactive features like simulations and videos that those books that are in your hand cannot do. So we're going to have this presentation, and I promise you will be wowed by the information that will be shared. If you look at this picture, the classroom of yesterday and the classroom of today. The classroom today has certainly evolved from what it looked like in the early 1900s. In the picture, we see a classroom in the past where students are sitting, focusing on the teacher in the front with a pocket chalk in front of the classroom with very little engagement and papers in front of them doing work. But today, in the classroom of today, you see content, digital learning, engaging students with immediate response time and information.
Okay, so right here you see the typical Lexile range for a 7th grader, what is highlighted in red. And so each of those grades is going to be a Lexile breakdown as we go through this. The Lexile range for the book you're looking at right now is an 890. And so that falls right above, kind of around the 7th, 8th grade level. So it would not touch all of those students where they were at this point. So this slide right here, you see each individual student plotted on this graph. Each orange dot represents one student. This was actually just taken this semester. So you see how some of the students are up near the 800 Lexile, some are down at 200. That's a second grade reading level. If I were to ask a student to, on a second grade level, to read the text in front of you, they probably would look at me like I didn't know what I was doing. But with Achieve 3000 as our digital platform we're showing you today, that touches every single Lexile of each and every student.
You actually have 2 articles in your folder at 2 different levels that pertain to the standard. The teachers may want to share a little information about you, but about these articles, but they're behind the blue sheet, I think. In your folder.
Green sheet.
Green sheet. Okay.
So yeah, each of those, one is at a second grade level and one is at like an 8th grade level. So it shows the differences in the vocabulary. You know, the sentence structure is different, the length, the complexity, everything is different according to each student's needs. And so this is another scatter plot of each and every student whenever this was taken. So we have some up there in 10th grade level. You see some second grade level, again, dramatically different. What's your 7th grade?
Yeah. So you're taking the same lesson and differentiating it so that because he's much less smart than me, so he'd be reading this one and then I'd be reading this one.
Okay. Yeah, and we wouldn't have to go in and do anything with it.
Content, so he didn't know that you're not reading.
Right, so that's brilliant. Okay, thank you.
I think that's an important point. You don't have to do anything. It adapts by itself for the student.
Yeah, so they're actually their diagnostic they take, which we'll get to. It shows, or it goes ahead and tests them to know where their Lexile is. So it's just we go in and check the data and we kind of know, okay, how do we meet their needs? How do we group them? How do we do the small groups when it's all right there for us? So very helpful.
This is an example of my 7th grade class. This would be what the scatter plot looks like right after they've taken their pre-test or their level set. And that's what she was making reference to, is that Achieve 3000 sort of gives them several different questions in reading. It might talk to them about cause and effect. It might talk to them about summarizing problem solution. And it just gives them a series of questions. And so when it's done, that's how their level set, that's how their Lexile is established. And so particular.
I was thinking about blushing to somebody.
He was blessing somebody back there. So you're saying
question.
that when the child gets done taking that, then the next thing that comes up on their individual screen is the lesson plan tailored to their Lexile.
Correct. Correct.
You know, I would have done a whole lot better if this was in school. Good Lord.
What? I don't know. I think that's the first slide.
I was going to say, learning as it should be. Nobody's moving.
This slide just shows that it touches everyone's native language. So it even has Spanish in all of the different Lexiles.
And double
Can I go on this one? And so the parent letter on the right, it shows like we still have the parent involvement aspect. If the parent wanted to go in, the parent wanted to check their student's progress, help them at home, anything like that, it is right there. They are able to do so. On the left is just a glimpse of the vocabulary. So the highlighted words, they can click on the word, they can see the definition, it'll pronounce it for them. Whereas in the textbook, the vocabulary, you'll flip to the very back and see it in the glossary. So the vocabulary is something that we can do with them as well.
That's making reference to the level set, and I think if we can advance to the next slide, this is what in the top left-hand column is what one of the questions might look like for the level set that they were just talking about. So they'll get a series of those questions, and from those questions it will develop their Lexile. So one's at 150 Lexile, and then Ashley is at a 1205, and so on and so forth. And so every time they get a lesson, it's going to be right at their lexile, so that they can, it's a level of their comprehension. So it's not just a level of them being able to phonetically pronounce the words, it's the level at which they can comprehend.
That adds something to that? Then there's the stretch activity as well, so they do have access to an on grade level reading sample as well, so they're not limited to just what their lexile is.
Right, and we usually grow them to their grade level lexile. So the stretch activity is on 6th grade, 7th grade, or whatever. And so if this student is reading at an 830 and they're really in the 8th grade and they're right in the middle, on the textbook, this is what you would get. And on the Achieve 3000, they might get it at on the 8th grade level, which might be at a 10-10 or a 10-10 or something like that, once we've gotten them to there. When I do Achieve 3000, I use the Mastery teaching model or gradual lease of instruction, and so I gradually get them to the stretch article. So I've worked with them actually on the reading content. It's not just what they see at their level, but I get them to the stretch activity. So if they need to recognize what figurative language looks like, and they can comprehend it on their level. So when we get to the stretch activity, it doesn't matter because it's still figurative language. They grasp the concept of figurative language regardless of what level it's at, whether it's at Achieve, whether it's at MAP, because they now have the concept down. And so we eventually get them to working at the stretch level to complete it on their grade level.
And so this right here just shows Lexile 545 on the left, Lexile 1415 on the right. You can kind of see some of the differences in the sentence structure and the vocabulary. The words in blue aren't going to be in blue on the right because of the Lexile difference and things like that.
Achieve 3000 sort of has 5 general steps for general rules that they like to use for the students being able to perform at grade level, and they take them through a series of steps. So in step number 1, this is what the screen looks like when the student opens up their individual Achieve 3000 account. They'll see a before reading poll. A lot of teachers and myself, we use that to create the interest in the reading. Like they might see this right away when they come in the classroom, and they can respond to it individually on their own, and then we'll have a class discussion. Kind of just sets the purpose. Then they read the actual article at their lexile, and then the activity is where they actually respond to the comprehension questions on their lexile. After reading the poll, then we have a discussion to see, do you feel differently now about this particular thing than you did before when you read the article? The thought question is geared to writing. They respond in writing. They use context evidence. And actually everything, there isn't a different slide, but they use the information from their article. It's then saved as a draft format on their thought question, so then they put together a complete writing package. Did you want to say something?
No, I was going to say, so this ancient Middle East who built the pyramids, so this would be like what the students would see in a social studies classroom. ELA standards are there as well as standard 6.2 in your book. That's the exact same page that we're pulling this. So this will be what they see.
At this, I call those little blue things radio buttons or recycle buttons. I'm not exactly sure which one they look like, but here we can kind of check their pulse for where they are with their comprehension. They get the ability to summarize each article, and they do it themselves. So once we've taught the skill of summarizing, they can now go in and they can click on the radio button and they can summarize a paragraph at a time themselves. They have an opportunity to generate questions and show their ability for higher level thinking in Bloom's taxonomy, where they create their own based on what they've read. And then setting the purpose is how they create the information as a draft that is then saved and carried over for the thought question for them to use to collaborate with their writing.
Thought questions are great for practicing text-dependent analysis, for the testing, for SC Ready, things like that. So a lot of times these are pulled off of Achieve to even do during class together. That's step.
We found that for students to be able to mark up the text, which yes, we cannot do with our district textbooks, but they do have an opportunity to mark up the text when they're in Achieve 3000. They can highlight, they can mark different things that are important so they can come back to them at a later time and reference them when they're responding to particular comprehension questions. It's a sample of one of the activity questions. Comparison. This is how they formulate their writing. So when you get to the thought question, that little button that says include in your answer, this is geared toward their lexile. So all the students may have to respond to the prompt that's in the thought question, but some students at different lexiles need to be able to respond at their lexile. They have the same information, they still have to indent their paragraphs, they still have to check for their spelling and transitions and grammar usage and so on and so forth, but they give it to them at their particular lexile until they're ready to perform and do the same thing at the stretch activity or at their individual level. Did you want to?
The kids also really like the math component because this is all altered to go along with their lexile. So they might get an easier lexile math question if they were lower. This would probably be like the 8th or 9th grade level.
That's the stretch article, which is going to be on their grade level. So notice the difference in how it looked. They don't even have radio buttons. They don't have the vocabulary, because when you're on grade level, the assumption is by now you've gone through enough on your own lexile level that you are ready for the grade level information. Did you want to speak to grade level? Okay. And the difference in the activity.
And these also have lesson plans, so if the teacher wanted to pull and take, from those, we could. There's a summary of the objectives, assignments, graphic organizers, rubrics, anything that you would need for each article.
Standards. Reaches our ELL population. Are gifted and talented. These are all resources for the teacher to know how to reach those different populations of students.
And then this is how we would access all of the reports. We can see how they're doing on activities, seeing if they're getting the standards, just everything they're mastering or they're not getting, we're able to go in and see so we can further group them into station rotation and things like that. So it's meeting each and every individual student.
So is the object not only that they learn the lesson in their lexile area, but does this also help them increase their lexile? Because the goal is to have all the 8th graders on an 8th grade lexile.
Correct.
So it seems counterintuitive that you would teach them on the 200 lexile, but is that designed to get them to increase that as well as learn the lesson, increase their reading skill as well as learn the lesson? Is that what the stretch goals start to do?
Well, when they get there, yes, to answer your question, but what happens is, so when they get their beginning lexile, Achieve 3000, after like 4 to 6 weeks, will go in and adjust their lexile. So when they've completed a lesson and then we've pulled our small groups, and I can see that little Johnny was struggling with cause and effect. Now Johnny and I have a mini lesson on cause and effect, and then I will assign little Johnny another lesson so he can practice it again on his own. After about 4 to 6 weeks, Achieve 3000 will adjust their lexiles either up or down. So both the student and I can see how they're performing and continue to grow their lexile.
Okay. Thank you.
And so here is just a graph of one of my classes. Their lexiles are shown, the last time it was updated, and then where they are in terms of far below, approaches, meets, or exceeds. It also gives a lexile goal. So whenever we conference with students and I show them, okay, here's where you are right now with your lexile, here is your goal, they can see that, and it's also knowing how to read the article and things like that. So what we do is a gradual release, and so we might sit down there walk them through it, as a class walk them through it, so they know the strategies. Close reading strategies especially help them with this. And then, do you want to talk on this? This is really great because we can see how they are going to do based off of where they are right now on the SC Ready. So when the end of course assessment comes, we can see where they are, how we can help them, and also how to target the instruction based off of where we expect them to go by the end of the year.
Patrick, do you want to add anything to that? Because I know I've seen in your newsletter.
Yeah, well, I teach freshman English honors at Wando High School, and the data that we get from the Achieve 3000 exercises really can empower our instruction and allow us to help students. So when I get my students at the beginning of this year, it's my first year using Achieve 3000, I had them all take the level set, which gives us a Lexile. So prior to that, we'd have to go into map data in the high school level and dig through the Enrich system. It's really laborious. So the Achieve 3000 gives us a working Lexile on day one. And then we can set goals and work as we go through. So as I assign students the Achieve 3000, they're constantly moving towards a higher Lexile score. So now all of my students have shown Lexile gains from the beginning of the year. I actually had of my 150 students in an honors level class, I don't know if y'all know this, but you can override an honors recommendation or a MAP score recommendation. So I have a huge variety. I have one student on a 4th grade reading level, and I have students who are reading at a college level and beyond. So this has been amazing. In years past, I would have just had to say, you're just not doing very well in reading comprehension assessments. You know, and as we leap up towards the EOC, it's like, I don't know what to tell you to do. I feel so empowered this year now that I can say, here it is in September, let's make a feasible goal, and then when the EOC score comes in, we can say, we achieved our goal. It may not be an A, but we knew where we were. It wasn't blindsided. So.
This is differentiation. This is real differentiation.
Yeah, so what this is right here is with each student, it shows where they fall on their MAP scores. And by clicking view, it'll show you altered lessons to help improve them to make it to the next category. So to improve their scores, you can click on view for altered lessons in order to move them up.
So there's a really nice interface between MAP and between this product, this digital content product.
So when a student gets their level set, they don't, one of the things I think that I was apprehensive about is having a student label this their Lexile, right? Oh, I'm this. And they will quickly do that. So they'll Achieve 3000 puts it into a career and college ready system. So they actually have to put in their career goal interest before it'll tell them. And then it tells them where they are on the way to their career goal expected Lexile. So it's kind of nice that it's not just stamp them with a Lexile score and move them on. It does give them expected Lexile range for their career, and they can track that too. So as their Lexile goes up, they can go back into the system and see how much closer they've gotten to their career goal Lexile.
This is the last slide. You want to speak to? Do you want to speak to this? So basically, this digital content provider has worked with the research on college and career, and she's worked with the researchers that developed the Lexile framework, metametrics. So together, they've done a lot of analysis. She sent us a lot of reading material that just over the weekend for us to send out and share with our teachers. But basically, it's looking at where our students are, thinking about where they want to grow to in terms of a career, and helping them progress monitor along the way. And so that's it. We'll take any questions you may have.
How much are we using this particular tool across the district?
So I know that the team, the ed tech, the innovation and digital learning teams in the room, it's my understanding that we've just now really gotten started. I went back, Cindy, you pointed me back to some board meetings a couple years ago, and I noticed that only 2 schools at that time in 2015 or early 2016 were using Achieve 3000, but now we have it in our middle, and our high schools have access to it as well.
All middle and high schools?
It's my understanding it's all middle and high, yes, all middle and high. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on this and digging into the reports and encouraging participation, and where we are seeing participation, we're seeing a lot of growth.
Looks great.
Absolutely. I have a question. how reliable do you think the Achieve 3000 is when it comes to actually measuring lexile compared to, let's say, the old way of comparing multiple different data points for a student to develop exactly where a child is?
Can I speak to that? So I ran a comparative analysis spreadsheet with my Lex Achieve 3000 grades and their reading comprehension test. We've been using it at Wando since before I was there. And there's an amazing correlation. That was like the big aha moment. I too was skeptical, and I don't think that adaptive technology is the panacea for education. But when I saw that there was a parallel, and I sent this to you, between these reading comprehension, the old school tests, right, what you would get from the textbook, what the collection textbook reading comprehension tests are, and the Achieve 3000, I'm like, now I can use this to improve test scores, and at the end of the year, the EOC will tell too.
Yeah, because I think as much as I'm a huge fan of technology, I've always been leery since I've been on the board about where's there a balance when it comes to exactly how much technology do you use to drive instruction and then push student achievement versus I saw a picture in somebody's office the other day and said good teaching is good teaching is good teaching, right? And so I'm wondering, as we're becoming so tech savvy in every aspect of our lives, that the technology starts to do things that maybe good old-fashioned teaching used to do. I can see it as a benefit to determine where your students are and so on and so forth. I mean, as you guys were talking and you mentioned there's a word that's on the text and the child can touch the button and it'll show the definition. Well, when I'm at home with my daughter and she's reading a text and she doesn't understand the word, I have an old-fashioned dictionary. I said, no, we're going to look this up because I need you to understand exactly what it means to look up a word in a dictionary. And so she has one in her book bag, one at school, and one at home. And so I'm wondering, as technology advances, our children no longer will use a dictionary. I don't know if that's a good
if I
thing
could
or bad
describe what an ideal blended learning classroom looks like, when you start that lesson for the day, think of that diamond. That green is good, solid, grade level, standards based. What you're charged with teaching. You start your lesson off for the first 10 or 15 minutes and teach that mini lesson. And then you release that responsibility, and you'll have, and Nate Nelson can, I see him nodding his head because he's got this going on in his building. Some students go to the computer, some students go with a teacher, and some students may do independent work, and then they rotate, and they may not do that every day. So
station and rotation model.
Yeah, you want to talk about that a little bit, Nate?
So I don't have the slide on this, but what it does is the teachers are able to post small groups while the digital content is kind of assisted in and really finding out what that student is. That teacher now sits for checking for understanding to make sure that that student is understanding. So in no way are we replacing the teacher. I always tell teachers, if I could replace you, I would just have a TA to assign all of the digital content. So we want to always make sure that there's 10 to 15 minutes of direct instruction, and then for closure, there's another 5 to 10 minutes built in so that we are always assessing students. We work with teachers weekly on assessing their data and how to pull, we call it targeted support instruction for those students in small group settings. So the teacher is able to touch all of the students.
Our time is up for this portion.
This is phenomenal. Thank y'all very much.
Direct your questions, I guess, to Cindy.
Yep.
Okay. Thank y'all very much.
Now you have to adopt the text.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. I know you've had a long day.
You want your books back?
Yes, we do. We want those books back because they're actually still in use.
I got no black history in there. We got to work on that one. It would be 365 days a year.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
I got to find some black history for me.
Right.
We got to bring it up for the meeting.
Okay, go.
All right, so because we're focusing on textbook adoption and recommendations, and Christy James here has been directly involved in that, she's going to do most of the talking on this. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
There is an established process for the textbook adoption. The state actually approves a certain set of books that meet their standards, so we can only adopt off that state approved list.
So they released that list to us in December, and we started requesting review copies for each school that offered those courses. This time around, the courses were all primarily aimed at high school and a couple middle school. But those schools got their review courses. There was a textbook caravan where the publishers come and they kind of do their sales pitch, show all of the connections that they can offer. There were representatives from each school at the caravan. Those caravan folks became that point of contact and shared that information with other teachers in their building. Each of the curriculum specialists developed their own textbook review for those teachers, so it was based on the standards. So the teachers were looking at how well that particular text paired up with our current standards. Those reviews were gathered back. The curriculum specialists had all created a review committee, so each school had a chance to give input, but then there was a smaller committee that was going through all of that. They also took into account any public input, so each school also hosted some sort of review event. It was usually in conjunction with another school event, so they knew there would be quite a few people in attendance, or they put a display up in the office with the review sheets, so that way anybody who walked into the front office was able to do that. So we've got our list of everything that was up for adoption: Spanish 1 through 4, including AP, French 1 through 4, including AP, German 1 through 4, Chemistry 1 and 2, including honors sections, same thing with physics and physical science. Those are the specific recommendations that the curriculum specialists and their review teams have come up with. And then on the following page, or following slide, is the full report that Katie Hines McCormick, who's the World Language Coordinator, and Rodney Moore, who's the Science Coordinator, they actually came up with a short report that explains why they particularly chose each of their titles. I do want to point out that right now, these are the ones that are up for adoption. We are putting in our official selections after board approval at the end of this month, but there is no guarantee of state funding. So when funding does, we're feeling pretty confident about the ones that are there, but we just have to put that out as a caveat all the time, so we don't want everybody thinking, oh yeah, we're getting Spanish 1 books, when there might not be funding. But the thing is, we do have that selection in place, so if we don't get funding this year and we get it the following year, we'd have that selection already made. Actually, on March 2nd, they released an additional list of courses that are also up for selection, and the curriculum specialists are going back through a very, very similar process that involves the committees, teacher input, public feedback, and these are what are considered low enrollment courses, so they didn't necessarily know if there would be funding, and the publishers didn't get invited to the caravan just because not every school, even in a large district like Charleston, offers it. So across the state, there wasn't that interest. But we are still going through that selection process, review copies, getting public input, teacher input with that. And those will be presented in May. And that will still allow materials to be ordered in June, and if there is funding for those, students would have those in hand before the school year begins.
So, and you brought up a point, these are textbooks you want to buy for courses that we teach.
The state is buying them.
Right. But if there's no funding to buy these textbooks, we're still teaching the courses and we're using the old textbooks? Okay.
It seems a little strange to juxtapose what we just did with this, to put those two things back to back, but the textbook industry's beginning to catch up, and there are some resources, especially for elementary and middle. You don't see it quite as much at the high school level, but over time, I think you will. You'll see more of the types of digital content we just saw.
So I move that we put this on the board agenda for May 26th.
And what you mentioned about
This is
digital
action item?
content, that is in the curriculum specialist reports.
So the action is to
Text it out, yeah, the text, okay.
approve the instructional materials
Okay, I got it.
recommended for use in Charleston County School
Number E.
District by the textbook adoption committee for the subjects in the attached recommendation and justification. So Cindy made the motion, second, Priscilla, okay?
I have a question for you.
Wait, hold on, all right, we have a question before we vote, yep.
These textbooks, these courses, will they be taught in all the high schools and, or just certain schools?
If a school is offering it, these would be the textbooks. So even if a school currently only offers Physics 1, but maybe in 2 years they'll offer Physics 2, this would be the textbook that would be used across the district.
Right, so you're gonna buy books based on,
The state buys books.
we're gonna select the books based on what schools have chosen, courses have chosen?
Or based on all the things they did in the cover page of the action item, all the different meetings with the different people.
That's not what I'm getting at. What I wanna know is that the kids in North Charleston, for example, have access to forensic science or journalism, and or STAL or something like that.
You're talking about course adoption. This is a book adoption.
I understand that.
So what happens is the state buys the books.
Wait, Reverend Thomas
We
is
order
asking a
them.
question, Cindy Ambrose is answering the question.
Right, so the state orders the books based on what all the districts in the state have told them.
Right.
Then when we teach the course, we call up the state and order the books, and the books are delivered.
Right, so it doesn't mean, so you order
We only
based on
order
the need.
We only order based on needs. That's correct.
So
They
some,
demand
but
powers to
realistically, some schools won't really get many of those courses at all, right?
It's up to that school.
It's up to the principal.
So, well, it's not up to the population, the population's not gonna dictate whether we can have it or not?
Yes, they do.
So
Enrollments in courses, yes.
yeah, because some schools are already heavy loaded, and other schools don't have much at all. So I'm just make sure we don't stack the day too high in one school, and the other schools, like schools in North Charleston, don't get anything. That's really my concern.
And I think what they're saying is if a school in North Charleston chooses to have this in their curriculum, they'll get the same book.
No, it's not, the book, yes, but let me look at the course, because depending on the population, how many students I have.
Precisely.
And whether they can afford it or
Okay,
not.
so
And
we're
that's
voting
not this
on the
department.
books. So Mr. Hollenshed,
All right.
Ms. Coates,
Yes. That
Reverend
would be the
Collins?
Yes.
Associate director over the high school.
Ms. Jeffrey,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
We don't.
Okay, and I vote yes, so the motion passes. So for SEC, I think the only item is the textbook adoption, so that can go on the consent agenda.
Finally adjourned.
Okay.